Ex-homeless Redditors, what was the scariest thing that you ever saw on the streets? Not that scary, but one time I was on a park bench just killing time. This homeless dude that everyone called Red was at another bench. He came up to mine, and asked if I would watch his shit while he slept for a bit, and I said yes. So he laid down next to me, and after a while he sat up for a cigarette. About 3 drags in, he starts coughing and his face turned all purple fast. Never realized how fast people turn purple from lack of oxygen. He fell over on his side, and I jumped up and gave him a little smack on the back a few times, and I kept yelling at him to get up. I was hesitant to call an ambulance cause of hospital bills that he obviously wouldn't be able to pay. But right as I took my phone out to call, he had been unconscious for like 30 seconds at this point. He starts gasping and gets up. I asked him if he was okay, and all he says is effing COPD and then takes a drag of the cigarette that he never even dropped the whole time that happened. Blows my mind he didn't drop it. Lamau.
Am I the jerk for getting mad about my mom marrying my fiancé's dad? I, 24, and my fiancé, 24, have been together since our sophomore year of college, so around 5 years now. For context, my mom, 50, had an affair with a coworker when I was 16, leading to my parents' divorce. She has been single ever since, going on dates but no serious relationships. I have a good relationship with my dad and his new wife. Sadly, my fiancé's mom passed 2 years ago due to cancer and his dad, 53, has been single since. My fiancé proposed last year but our wedding was delayed due to the virus. Our families had never met up to this point because his family lives in South Carolina, whereas we're in North Carolina, where we went to college, around a 3 hours drive away from his dad. 3 months ago, in January 2021, we decided that it was time to have our families meet for the first time to discuss our upcoming wedding in June 2021, held in our backyard, virus appropriate, immediate family only. My dad and his wife, my fiancé's dad, and my mom all met at our place to meet and discuss the wedding. This went well, albeit there was some tension between my mom and my dad. This morning, out of the blue, my mom called me and announced that she had eloped. I was shocked as she had not been dating anyone to my knowledge. Upon questioning, it turns out that she and my fiancé's dad had been dating in secret since that meeting in January and had married in secret yesterday, making my fiancé my stepbrother. I want to throw up just thinking about this. She said that I should now cancel my wedding because it would be inappropriate to marry my stepbrother. I'm absolutely horrified. I shouted at my mom, saying she just loves ruining my life and called her selfish. First she cheated on my dad, and now she went and married my fiancé's dad, knowing full well I was about to marry my fiancé. My mom then said I was still young and I'd have the chance to meet someone new, but she's old and has to take every opportunity she's got, and so I was an ungrateful B-word for not approving of her marriage. She then accused me of wanting her to die alone. I don't think I'm the jerk, but I just wanted to make sure because ultimately I don't want her to have to be alone even though I think she did that to herself by hurting my dad. I think I should be allowed to marry my fiancé as we met first. I'm also 12 weeks pregnant with my fiancé's kid, so that complicates matters more. We haven't told anybody yet. Am I the jerk for being mad about my mom marrying my fiancé's dad and because she said I can't marry my fiancé anymore?
My husband has been making cornbread for me and our daughter every day this week. I finally asked why today. I effing love this man. I had kind of a crappy start to the week, but I didn't think he noticed. Our daughter is growing a new tooth and has been so grumpy, so it's been hard for both of us, and he started to bake cornbread. The first night, I was grateful and said so, but on the second, third, fourth day, it was kind of weirding me out. I thought he maybe heard about a neighborhood bake sale or something. But I asked him tonight after the 7th round of cornbread, why he was making so much, and he walked to the bedroom and pulled a note out of our sock drawer. He said, on our 4th date you told me that when you were a nanny, you made cornbread for teething children because it was soft for their gums, and nice for you too. Then he told me that he wrote that down just in case. He has kept that note for 9 years. I love him.
What is the craziest place you have climaxed? On my wife's couch right before we met her parents. I am an officer. One day this extremely beautiful lady came in to report a lost item. Apparently someone had stolen her purse which had something very valuable in it. My boss is the world's biggest player and is always trying to get a girl. So he desperately tried to flirt with her and make moves on her even though she clearly seemed uncomfortable. So I just stepped in and I took a report so that she could leave, because she seemed panicked. She left the precinct and I thought that would be the end of my day. But as I was leaving I heard a buzzing noise. I checked the desk drawer I was just at, and there was an iPhone. It was ringing from Bestie. I picked up the phone, and it was the voice of the beautiful girl that was at the precinct today. Long story short, she had forgotten her phone and she was hoping that I could hold on to it. I agreed and said that whenever she was ready she could come and pick it up from the precinct. The next day, I was anxiously awaiting my second chance to see this beautiful girl, but then Bestie calls again. She said that I should come to a certain location to meet her and drop off her phone. Me and my boss left to go to this location. As soon as I told my boss the situation, he was very eager to come with. When we showed up at the location, it turned out to be a gallery for old rich people, and we were welcomed in. This is when I saw her. She was in a beautiful white dress and she looked absolutely stunning. You could literally call me a pyramid the way I was bricked up. I handed her her cell phone, and just as I was leaving, she invited me to stay and chat. Long story short, I ended up staying the night at her apartment. We went on many dates, and soon, a year later we were engaged. The only issue was, she had met my parents multiple times, and she knew that I came from an incredibly middle-class background. However, on the other hand, her family were real estate giants and multimillionaires. I was planning to meet them in a week, But things took a turn for the worse. This was definitely my biggest regret. So what happened was me and my fiancée were getting in some sexy time on her birthday, and just as things were getting super intense, her doorbell rang. For reference, we were on the couch, so I quickly threw on some pants, and that's when it happened. I nutted just as the denim of my pants brushed my tip. I nutted all over my pants, and there was an absolutely huge stain on my right upper leg. There was no chance of hiding this, and I had absolutely no idea what to do. But to make things worse, the people that came through the front door were my fiancée's parents. They said they wanted to surprise her for her birthday. As my fiancée, whose legs were literally shaking, I'm black, she introduced me to her parents. Her father, who was 2 meters away from the couch, where I was sitting, to hide the huge stain by bending over, put his hand out for me to walk over and shake it. I had no idea what to do, because if I got up, her little sister, mother, father, and she would see the massive mess that I had made all over my pants. So I just stood there sad, looking at my fiancée, who was getting mad that I wasn't shaking her father's hand. So the only logical thing to do was to try and escape. But before I could, my biggest enemy walked through the door. It was a big German shepherd. It immediately started to sniff me and smelled something. It jumped on me and started biting and licking my pants. In front of the whole family. It looked like it was eating me out. I immediately yelled, "I got a piss," and Hurdle jumped the dog and then ran out. That night I had at least 40 missed calls from my fiancée and another 20 missed calls from our mutual friends. The following day she wouldn't even talk to me, but I had to explain to her what had happened. Our next encounter was probably the most awkward of my whole entire life. But after a long 3-hour explanation, and tons of messages sent to both her parents as well as our mutual friends, we decided to have our wedding, and now we have 3 beautiful kids. Edit. Sometimes my father-in-law calls me the big nut because of our first encounter. An open letter to my beautiful wife, who is now in heaven. I will come to see you soon. We spent some of our best years together. I'm devastated that you were taken too soon. We could have had a beautiful life, growing old together, having a big family, watching our little girl grow up. It hurts you'll miss huge parts of her life and you've already missed many. She will be 5 next year and I just wish you could see how lively and beautiful she's turned out to be. But, every now and then, she asks where her mom is. She obviously can't remember your funeral and I can't bring myself to tell her. I miss you so much. I miss your smell, your hair, your touch, and your kisses. I miss how you made me feel when I hug you and when I look into your eyes. I miss what else that could have been. I still act like I've got it together for the most part. In a month, it'll be 2 years since I last touched you, hugged you, kissed you, laughed with you, talked with you about our future, our daughter, and where we plan on living. Our birthdays just passed. 6 days apart. Poop still F's with me. How could you leave me alone with our baby? F everything for taking you away from me, from our girl, from our future, for leaving me with this grief. I'm finally planning on talking to a therapist because I'm hurting, no matter how much I keep it bottled. I'm usually okay for the most part. I try not to think about it, or talk about it, but it's always there. The effing pain is always there. The longing to be with you again and having you in my arms is always there. I miss how much you loved me. I miss you so much, so effing much. I'll come to spend some time with you soon. I'm planning on taking our baby girl to see her great-grandparents next year. They can't wait to see her. I still never told them you are not with us because I know it will break them. I know I have to hold everything together for our baby girl, but it's so hard without you. Everyone thinks I'm okay, that I've moved on or gotten over it, but I've always been good at keeping it together, or at least acting like it. Though lately, I've been slipping. Especially since it's so hard to see our girl grow up knowing you're not here to see it. You can't believe how tall she is now. She looks like you more and more every single day. Honestly, I don't know how I do it sometimes. I just know I have to. You left us when we had so much left to live, but I will always cherish the time we spent together. Mi amor, mamacita, my love, my beautiful queen, you left me broken. Have you ever walked into your home and knew something wasn't right? I bought my first house when I was 19 years old and I got 2 male and 1 female Rottweilers to protect my home. It was a big house. Flash forward about 2 years. I went out of town for about 5 days. I got home and called out for my babies. No answer. So, I started to go room to room looking for them. I found them in the last bedroom that I looked in. They had cornered a guy that had broken into my house and had him cowering him on top of a highboy. I then called the police and told them that someone had broken into my house and that they needed to come and get him. I was told to get out of the house and that they would be there as soon as possible. They showed up in about 5 minutes to me sitting in my living room watching TV. I took them to the bedroom where the man was still on the highboy. The officers took a step into the room and all 3 dogs stood up and started looking at them and then started to show their teeth at the guy on the highboy. Well, I called them out of the room and the police got the man down and put him in handcuffs. He had one request before they took him to jail. Could he please go to the restroom? PSA officers, what's the craziest thing you've seen someone try to get through airport security? One day, I had a Chinese guy come through while I was operating the X-ray, and I saw his bag had a metal thermos full of liquid. If I had known what was inside, I would have gotten as far away as I could. I ended up checking the bag and telling him, either pour it out, drink it, or turf it. You can't bring it through. Being at the international terminal and Chinese tourists being our most common visitors by a long shot, it's often that there is a language barrier. I was fortunate enough that this wasn't the case with this passenger. He said in a very heavy Chinese accent, "Oh, okay, I'll pour it out." I pointed out the sink to him, and he left and came back. This dude came back, bottle still full of liquid. I said to him, "Sir, I told you to empty the bottle. Why is it still full? I can't open it. The lid is stuck." I tried opening it myself. No chance it was opening. It was like one of those lids that you can use as a cup. I told him, "Well, if you can't open it, you can't take it." So I threw it away. We rotate positions every 20 minutes to avoid fatigue, So I was on to the next position before the guy had the chance to argue with me. The dude is still hanging around asking for his thermos. I got one of our floaters, which is a guard who covers people when they need to be replaced for whatever reason, to cover me and approach the dude. I gave him a firm direction to leave and forget the idea of getting the bottle back. By this point, we are arguing. My team leader came over and said, "What is going on here? You have been dealing with this guy for, 30 minutes now." I told my team leader the situation and showed him the bottle. My team leader was always overly helpful with people, and he wanted to help this guy get his bottle back. He tried opening it, but it didn't budge. Then he had a light bulb moment. "Hey, I know. Why don't we gently tap the edge of the lid on the bench and see if we can loosen it that way?" I said it was up to him. What's the worst that could happen, right? So the team leader gently taps the bottle on the edge of the bench, when all of a sudden, there was this loud bang noise. I was directly in the line of fire of this lid along with the entirety of its contents. All 1 liter of it. At first, I felt this massive pain in my pinky finger where the lid had hit me square on my nail. And then the smell kicked in. The stuff that was inside this bottle had covered me from head to toe. It was under so much pressure that it even hit and covered the wall 2 meters behind me with a perfect outline of my body. I was heaving something ridiculous and I left my position, turned around and started throwing up in the bin. Then I ran to the men's restroom, heaving the whole way there, ripping my clothes off. By the time I reached the bathroom, I had removed as much clothing as I could before getting down to my underwear. I was in a frenzy trying to find a soap dispenser with soap in it, but not one had any. I had my face in the sink trying to wash whatever the hell this stuff was off of my face and the rest of my body and clothes. I get back to the screening point. The lane where it all happened was shut down entirely and there were 4 cleaners there trying to clean the mess up. My boss sent me home without question. I spent hours trying to get the smell off me with different products. It just wouldn't go away. It took handfuls of washing powder to remove the smell from my body. The next morning I come to work and my manager says, "I heard about what happened to you." I can't believe it. That's disgusting. I asked what was it like, off tea or coffee or something? And he says, "Oh, you don't know?" Then he started to leave, telling me what happened while I was absent. He said, "After you ran to the bathroom, we kept the guy there and started questioning him. What he did to you and what was in that bottle. He told us he vomited in it. The guy had vomited into his thermos on his flight in. That wasn't even the craziest part. He flew in 6 weeks before, so the vomit was 6 weeks old. He forgot the bottle in his bag, which had obviously started to ferment or some shit, which ended up covering me head to toe. My mean girlfriend bullied me to her friends. My girlfriend, 23, and I, 25, have been dating for a little under a year now. We met 3 years ago when she was in college and I was spending the summer with a relative in the same city as her. We met on a dating app, went on a date, and started hooking up. I thought she was a sweet girl and very cute, but nothing else ever happened because a week after she started classes again, she told me she was seriously talking to someone. I left for grad school and so we didn't speak again, had each other on Instagram though, until about a year ago when she ended up going to grad school at the same institution. I saw on Instagram that she was here, slid into her DMs, and then we started dating. I thought she showed pretty much every green flag I could ever imagine. She has lots of friends she's really close to her family, volunteers, has lots of hobbies, and is academically and professionally successful. She's so incredibly sweet and considerate. For example, my birthday was just a month after we started dating and yet she still got me a perfect gift. She is pretty much beloved everywhere she goes. Her colleagues love her, my friends love her, my family love her. I also want to emphasize how not mean-spirited she is. I've definitely dated girls before who were bitchy towards people around them, but my girlfriend is nothing at all like that. The only times I've heard her talk badly about people, it's like she's in a stand-up comedy special. It's all humor, nothing mean. And she never gets into arguments with her friends or family and is pretty much on good terms with everyone she's ever met. Anyways, today she was working on her computer and left for the gym. For some reason she left it on. I think she had some research thing running. It was on the kitchen counter so I had to move it, and I saw a Google Drive folder shared with a bunch of people that was actually titled "Smoke Darts Eat Farts Super Duper Secret Edition." I know I should absolutely not have looked, but my curiosity got the better of me. Basically it was a folder shared with her friend group from college, which is about 10 girls and super close. There were a lot of subfolders. The first one I looked at had homework keys and back exams from their classes. Then I looked at a document that was titled "B Words Love Being Out of Pocket." It was massive, like 100 pages, and there were subheadings for different topics. It seemed like a collection of out-of-pocket things any of them had said. Each one was cited with the name of which one of them had said it. As I was scrolling through I saw my name under a subheading "Men." Here's what it said, paraphrased: "He seems like the kind of man to purchase LinkedIn Premium. I feel like he jerks off to his own Instagram stories. There's no way that at least once in his life he hasn't removed a girl's tampon with his teeth. They were all signed with my girlfriend's name." I'd felt bad about snooping until then, but after that I really wanted to see if there was anything else about me. I looked through the rest of that file and there were insults about basically everyone they'd ever met, including about every man my girlfriend had ever been with. Honestly, mine were way less mean than theirs. I guess that's a positive? There was also a folder with presentations it seemed like my girlfriend had made and presented before each semester in college. They were all titled something like roster or to H words and the date, and they had a slide for every man she was talking to, as well as a recap for whoever she'd done over break. Of course I was there, with my full name and pics of me and a picture of my car too. The only description of me was 6/10, bought me cigs and let me use a flavored latex. There were also a lot of pics and videos of them doing illegal/disgusting things, and there were some very mean things about other men they knew, like ranking them on the loser scale. The only other thing I saw about me was in a folder titled Life-Changing Moments that had a list for each of them. There were a lot of insane things in my girlfriends that I'd never heard about. Think, intimate disease from unprotected intimacy with frat brother, or Vespa ride with hot Italian man, or smoked a pack and threw up. There was also one about me which basically said, F'd blank and realized I needed to get out of my for the streets era if I didn't want to end up being a sad sack of crap too. That is the one that really got me, as it seems so much meaner than everything else, and I have no idea what she meant by it. It was getting close to the time she would be back though, so I just closed everything and locked her laptop. She got back, I didn't mention anything, and we just had dinner as normal. I am here now because I have absolutely no idea what to do. Everything I saw was honestly awful, and yet she is the last person I would ever expect something like this from. I am in disbelief and I really don't know where to go from here. I am hoping there is some explanation that doesn't make her the world's worst person, and yet I really don't want to confront her either. We have a great thing going and I don't see any way that confronting her isn't going to lead to drama. I don't want to talk to anyone I know about this, in case we stay together and she then has to face them, so I thought I would ask here and see if anyone had any reason to apply to this completely absurd situation. I threw my parents' favorite line back in their faces during an argument and it humiliated them. I'm currently 27 years old. Growing up I had always been the kid who my parents didn't give a crap about. As the middle child, it was always, oh, your sibling needs us more. And my needs were quite often just not met. Any attempt to get my parents to do something with or for me was met with being called selfish and told my siblings' needs came before mine right now. Neither of my siblings have special needs, they are just both kind of spoiled brats. My brothers, 30 and 25, are the golden oldest child and their precious baby. I was the unwanted girl child in the middle. They made this clear in all sorts of ways, from not wanting to pay for my school supplies and wanting me to figure it out, to the way birthdays were treated, to Christmas. Forget them showing up to anything for me, but I was expected to drop everything to show up to any and everything my brothers did. My brothers both got brand new cars for their 16th birthdays, but I didn't need one. I got a rusty bike they found at a garage sale and told if I could fix it up, they guessed I could have it. I fixed it up, and they gave it to my brother instead. I moved in with my aunt on my 18th birthday. I'm getting married to a wonderful woman, and my parents just recently found out. They called me several kinds of butthurt as to why I hadn't told them and then immediately started in on how I couldn't do certain things because of my brothers. I can't have a nice chicken or fish dish, it has to be steak or pizza or they won't eat it. I can't be too affectionate because you know how guys get around two girls being together. I can't have a wedding party if they can't be involved. I finally snapped. I told them that neither they nor my apparently perverted brothers were invited. That, for once, something was about me, not them. I told them that I had no interest in making my wedding about their crappy sons, who have achieved nothing in life so far because they babied them to the point of uselessness. My wedding was not about what they wanted. My mother cried, and my father asked why I was treating them so poorly. I said, you're just being selfish, my needs come before yours right now. There was a stunned silence before my father told me that it wasn't fair that I would say that to them because this was a different situation. I hung up and blocked them both, but my cousin, who I'm close to, said they were making a huge ordeal out of it. They've been calling other family members and then being surprised when they're told yes, they can believe I'd not want them making my wedding about them or my brothers. My mother apparently posted a long woe is me, where did I go wrong post on FB but took it down after my aunt lit her up in the comments about where she went wrong. My older brother reached out just once to ask if he really wasn't invited, and I said yeah, he really wasn't. He seemed a little upset, but at this point, I don't even care. All he said after that was that I shouldn't have said what I did to our parents and that they are upset they aren't invited to the wedding, and even if I didn't invite him or our other brother, I should at least invite them. I refused and hung up. My parents and brothers don't know when or where we're getting married, I never intended to invite them, but eloping is starting to look pretty good right about now. My grandmother has reached out only once to say while she kind of understands why I don't want them there, it was kind of a blow low to throw the line they always used on me back in their faces. I thought maybe I'd get some third-party opinions here, but I don't think I was wrong. For college teachers, has any student ever tried to bribe you? The student was a woman, let's call her S. S isn't very good at anything. She was allowed into the staff kitchen to make some tea for the practice exams. The reason for this is because she had a very privileged life with servants and no need to work due to daddy's money. Daddy passed away and was in tons of debt, so there was no inheritance. So she thought, I'll go to college to get an education while I figure it out. S is extremely outspoken and interrupts me constantly. She also never does her homework. All of my class know that it is an exam-only module where 100% of the marks come from a final exam. I've written tons of notes in her personal records, well typed them as they're not electronic, about how she doesn't do her homework and how I think she will fail. She thinks homework is beneath her too. I gave her and the rest of the class the practice exam. The students start working furiously as the time limit is very tight. She sits there and stares at it. I send the students out for break after 2 hours and mark furiously in the hour lunch break. All but 2 people have passed the practice exam. S and another student who got 2 insta-fail questions wrong. I SMS message each of the students to come see me one by one and I give them feedback and what to work on. It goes well for all the students. They say thank you and I give them some reading to do to buff up on the areas they needed more marks and noted it for Tuesday next week for a workshop class. At the very end was S. S had scored 0 marks. She came into the faculty room and immediately started to make excuses about her performance. I couldn't get a word in for about 20 minutes. My colleague on his desk puts on his headphones and cranks up the volume. I can hear the tinny sounds across the room. I finally get a word in and say that is all irrelevant and that the exam soon isn't enough time to sort out her weaknesses as the gap in knowledge is just far too large. I say to her you can do the lower level exam instead, which she might have a chance at. She says no, I need it for my job. I said what job? She said I don't know. So how do you know you need it? My friend said I needed it. And your friend is? She's just somebody I know from church who doesn't work. She's getting angry now and I'm pressing the silent security button in my pocket. She is very suddenly quiet and says she'll do anything to pass. I say it's pointless because it's an externally marked module. I don't get to see the exam papers. I can only infer what might be on the exam papers from old papers. She says I can't do that and I have to help her, as in cheat in the exam to help her pass. I'm not even going to be in the same county when the exam happens as I'm at a conference. Security quietly makes their way into the faculty office and she says I'll do anything and says I can have a night with her. I ask her to leave and remind her of the exam soon. Security walks her out of the building. I turn to my colleague and ask him he saw that right? He says yes and we go into cover our asses mode. I get the SD cards out of the cameras I have in my office. They're car dash cameras, and back them up and upload them to several secure locations. I also go to IT admin and ask them to preserve the CCTV of my office. I then write a report to my boss detailing a potential false allegation. I have a horrible feeling on Monday there will be a complaint against me and my colleague. We have tons of video evidence and witnesses from the security guards too. I will probably be put on a few days administrative leave, so I'm planning to go fishing at a lake nearby for a few days. It has to go through a process that assumes we're guilty and then get cleared after going through multiple reviews. I hate it when that happens. I have proof that my son is responsible for a hit and run. He doesn't care. Please help me. My son has always been a bit disconnected from the real world. He doesn't talk a lot, doesn't seem to think a lot, and he's overall very quiet, very distant. He has no hobbies and spends most of his time on his laptop. I've seen him mindlessly spend all 16 of his waking hours in front of a television, and he truly has nothing going for him. No job prospects, no friends, and he's not even close to the rest of his family, but I still love him. Loved him. Basically, he came home a little shaken one day and refused to sit down at dinner. He told me that he hit a deer to explain the bloodstains on his windshield. However, we don't have deer in this part of the country. And when I went on his laptop, I found a concerning amount of Google searches over what to do in the case of a hit and run, how to get away with it, and how likely it is that someone will be caught. Finally, I did some research of my own, and I discovered that 2 children were hit the day my son came back with his bloody car. Those kids lost their lives because the driver fled, and as soon as I read the story, I connected the dots and sprinted to my son's room, confronting him. However, he just looked at me with a dead stare and said, "It doesn't matter. You're not going to call the cops on me, will you?" And then, when I said I would, he threatened to tell the cops that I smoke a certain plant recreationally, and that if he went to jail, so would I. I'm devastated. I cannot believe I raised a child with no empathy, but I can't call the cops because I'll lose custody of my other children. They deserve better. What on earth should I do? Has your revenge ever driven someone to their death? Corey always bullied me. At 16, I'd had enough. I knew I could mess him up with his own ego, so I did. I drove by a place at a state park he liked to hang at, insulting him. He got in his car to give chase and I led him down a route he doesn't usually go, but I know very well. I approach a bend that is much sharper than it looks. I slow down, and still take it a little fast, but mostly safe. Him? He rockets to the corner, thinking his sedan will take it like it's on rails. Not so much. The outside of this turn is a sheer drop into a ravine. A very deep one. The guardrail didn't stand a chance. His car was just at that height that it jumped the rail and sailed into the ravine, but I didn't know this at that moment. By now, I'm around the bend accelerating, glancing in my rear view planning my next move if he makes it. Obviously, he didn't, so I just got out fast to put myself in public at a McDonald's as quickly as I could. I then go home, and forget about the McDonald's receipt in my backpack. The weekend passes. Come to find out Monday at school he took a 25 miles per hour corner at 60 trying to catch me. He didn't die on impact. It took at least 36 hours in that ravine to die of his injuries. His buddies and girlfriend saw me that day when I provoked him. Everyone knew what had happened. Many blamed me. Many hated me. But, it didn't matter. I had said words and driven off, nothing else. He killed himself with his stupidity and ego. The law investigated and found only exactly that, and look, a receipt and a grainy video from a clown burger proves I did nothing wrong afterward either. Just a kid and his happy meal. I ate it absolutely glowing with the knowledge that whatever happened, he did it to himself, and I'd probably never have to deal with him again. I had no idea while eating that little burger how right I truly was.
Lawyers have read it. What's the dumbest thing a client did to sabotage their own case? I had a client in jail awaiting trial on kidnapping charges. About a month before trial, this person sends a letter, through intermediaries, to the victim threatening both the victim as well as anyone that helps the victim. This was after the client had been instructed numerous times that other than me, there was not to be communication in any way with anyone about the case. The prison listens in on all calls to inmates and reads all outgoing mail. Needless to say, the letters were intercepted and new charges of witness intimidation were filed. Prior to this, the client had a pretty decent case. Several months later the client did the same thing over again. Not me, but I was at court early in the morning and this one guy was there to see if the judge would end his probation term early. Dude had one problem though, he was hammered. He appeared fine but when he walked up to the podium he was clearly slurring his words. They made him do a breathalyzer test on the spot and he had blew a 29 in front of the judge and also had a half pint in his pocket. What's also crazy is that it was like 8 a.m. Judge had him locked up right then and there.
What's a creative way to say let's fuck? You wanna listen to a movie? I feel like this is too cringy now that I'm in my 40s, but when I was in my 20s and was actually in shape, as in not round, I had a girl hit on me while I was working and she said, "What time do you get off?" My instant reply was only after you do. I usually become highly offended by the fact that he's dressed. Are you wearing jeans? In the house? Gross. Are you coming to the party? What party? The pants party. It's a party in my pants and you're invited. It wasn't so much the actual line but how he said it, and this actually worked on me, and we've been together almost 10 years and have 2 amazing. Who's the wrong person you fell in love with? Once upon a time there was a skank. I, 26 female, just fell in love with the wrong girl. Beyond the bedroom she's the worst person I've dated in my life. When I first met her she was probably the most normal person you could meet. She did all her homework on time, participated in classes, had a strict diet, and worked out regularly. When I met her for the first time after class she seemed normal. It was only after that very same class that night that I learned how insane she was. She asked me out on a date. We went to an arcade, watched Ninja Turtles in theaters and went to a restaurant. Everything was going really good. We ordered some beers, got buffalo wings for an appetizer. Then she did the craziest thing known to man. She ordered fried pickles. I asked to go to the bathroom and hopped out the window. I fell in love with the wrong girl.
I dated a dead woman for only $89. There's people that are gone too soon, and some of them are gorgeous. Are you lonely? Think your soulmate isn't born yet? Maybe she died already. Death for us at Summons only means it's harder to travel. How did I end up on this site? I don't even know. I woke up one day after a bad hangover of drinking cheap wine alone at home, and it was open on my computer. There was an address and a few vague compliments from so-called former clients. Amazing experience. Carl, 26, cheaper than pleasing my ex-wife. Marcus, 42. Good to know people are still hot in the afterlife. Ethan, 21. Why am I falling for this bullshit, you ask? Being a lesbian in a small city is hard, especially when you're not feminine enough to attract women that like girly girlfriends, but not masculine enough to be the opposite type. My few girlfriends were from other states, from other countries even, and ended up cheating on me. Long-distance relationships with the living aren't working. Why not try the dead? Also, $89 is way less than I paid for a plane ticket to watch Leslie Riley kiss her real girlfriend in front of me. Yes, I was the side chick. Best friend my ass. My hotel was non-refundable, and I'm bored. I'm bored with my life. I want to do something out of the ordinary. That's how every shitstorm starts, isn't it? The address was in a bigger town, a 2-hour drive, and they opened on Saturdays, so I jumped in my old Corolla, Joan Jett and the Blackheart's my only company on the road. It was easy to find the address. Despite not being a big building, the place was brand new and flashy. I parked in a nearby smaller street and entered. I was welcomed by a woman with very red lips and bulky balayaged hair that looked like her name was Shonda, and it really was. Shonda was in her middle 30s, and wore a red tie the exact tone of her lips, and false Louboutins. She was cheery after seeing me enter. "Hi, I'm Shonda," she pointed at the cheap golden name tag. "What's your name, dear?" "It's Farah." "So, you're here to get a girlfriend for yourself?" "Yes." "If that's alright," I said, insecure. "Of course it is, silly. So, let me explain. We'll do a match in our database to find the ideal date for you. Your date will be available during 48 hours after her summoning. No need to worry, she'll simply tell you she needs to go and leave, then disappear out of sight. When you come for the next time, and believe me, you will," she chuckled, "we'll do a new matching, or you can pay a $29 fee to have a specific girl summoned. Now, may I have your credit card?" She talked about disrupting the souls of the dead like it was a mere office business. But it was. Interesting. It was worth it. After paying, I filled a few forms in a tablet. They didn't ask for personal info such as full name or legal documents, just your preferences to make sure you're getting a good match. It was pretty much a personality test. I finished in around 15 minutes, and Shonda said great. With a big smile and asked me to wait, then typed furiously. The summoning would take 10 minutes. After the appointed time, a girl came from a back door. She was in the middle 20s like me and pretty cute, with shoulder-length brown hair and big, shiny eyes. "Hi, Farah." She seemed joyful and kissed me in the cheek. Her body felt very solid and warm, what surprised me for some reason. "I'm Lisa. What do you want to do together?" We were still in time for a late lunch, so I took Lisa to a place I liked. She asked a lot about me, but I'm pretty boring, so I'll spare you the details. "It feels so good to properly eat again," she remarked, biting a huge piece of her burger. I had chosen a place with plenty of options, and was eating spaghetti. "What do you mean properly eat?" I asked. "What's the afterlife like? You can't eat?" "Oh, I can't tell you a lot about it, but you don't need to eat there. Sometimes we eat just because we miss it, but it never tastes as good because it's not exactly real," she explained, her mouth still half full. "How it's not real?" "If I can ask that, of course. Everything in the afterlife is made of thoughts. You can make things come to existence with your mind, but it's hard. You have to be, let's say, high level, or friends with people that are experienced. It's easier to collectively imagine things and places too. I get it. This is so fascinating, I said. I could spend all the time asking her about being dead. I wanted to know how she died, how she lived, everything. But it seemed too rude, so I could only hope she would spontaneously talk about it. We talked about a lot of things. She was very nice and, like myself, a Dickens fan. I think that we really connected, and when we shared a dessert by the end of the meal, it felt like I knew Lisa for at least a few weeks. It was hard to guess when she died, because she knew a lot about current subjects. I had to ask how. She smiled. Summons Incorporated helps us keep up with everything that is happening, so we can connect better with the living. I can even sing a little bit of a Frank Ocean song, you know? I laughed. I hope they pay you well for that. You don't need money in the afterlife, Farah. You need knowledge to create things with your mind, that's all. But they pay me the best thing that I could ask for, being back sometimes. It's good to see the world changing firsthand, and it's nice to meet new people. Afterlife is not bad, but it can get lonely. And sometimes every day is the same. Didn't it happen when you were alive too? Ha, no, dear. I had no time to be bored back then, she simply answered, then grabbed my hand. You're really sweet. Thank you, you're sweet too, I said with a smile. I couldn't stop looking at her hands and wondering how it was possible to make her real, even if only for 2 days. You're wondering what I am right now, aren't you? She openly laughed. Don't worry, this is not my first afterlife date. I don't know how I can be like that, but I'm neither a ghost nor a corpse. During the time I'm here, I'm a human like you. Everything went smoothly from then on. I told Lisa about my exes, she told me a little about her friends on the other side, and how it was preparation to get a living date. For example, you can't learn a language you don't know already, unless you study it for a proper time in the afterlife. It can take as much as you take on Earth, but it usually takes less, because you don't have to waste time taking care of your bodily needs. Lisa learned Italian after she died. Have you wondered what would happen if someone bad went there to get a date? Could they hurt one of you? I asked, suddenly worried. Oh, no. The matching process don't depend only on the forms, it's something somewhat supernatural. A bad man would be assigned some lady demon that would fuck his ass. The method is perfect, as far as I know. Well, it seems to be, I said, gently placing a kiss on her lips. She reciprocated. We walked around the city, had a sundae together, then I drove us back to my place. It's a small, unspecific flat, but she seemed to like it. She's also fascinated by city lights, fairy lights, and lights in general. What a cute girl. Sex was great, and we cuddled and ordered pizza afterwards. I'd say it was a normal date, except it was so much better than my normal dates. She's even-tempered, easy to please, and had the softest skin. That's literally everything I asked for in a woman. I was ready to dismiss everything as an inebriate dream, but when I woke up in the next morning, she was there. I don't think I ever smiled so wide. It was a good day. She loved watching movies, drinking wine, and turning light switches on and off. I started to make the calculations of how much I would need to summon her every weekend. It would be the most solid relationship I ever had. Maybe if I took a few extra hours of work during the week I could make it. We were once again lazily snuggling in bed after doing it. Nothing more fitting for a rainy Sunday afternoon, and I even asked myself if that's how it feels to be happy. I never had a terrible life, I only knew what averageness was like. She raised her eyes and I was shook off from my abstractedness. Was it good? You know? Lisa blushed. It was my first time with a woman. A distant siren sounded in my head, I didn't know why. But I ignored it, and assured her it was amazing. She explained she signed up for dating girls after repeatedly being requested by the same guy. The first time was fine, but she was getting bored of not meeting new people. Monday came, and I called in sick to spend the rest of my time with Lisa at home. I never met someone so fun to be with, and so grateful for the small things, such as eating and sleeping. You can sleep there, sure, but you never dream, she explained. What's the point, right? I did what I always do in my relationships, and rush things. I'm gonna miss you, Lisa. Can I request you again? Well, I think I won't get bored with you, she half smiled. My heart kind of broke for remembering why she stopped dating men. I'm not special for her. It sucks. It really sucks. We were watching Brooklyn 99 together as we made out and talked, so she added you're such a Charles Boyle. I laughed, then got distracted by my own curiosity. Do Summons Incorporated have something from you to summon you? Yes. It makes summoning easier and cheaper. They got it from my grave. You could visit it someday. I barely get visits lately. She sounded a little bit sad. Of course. I would love to, I said. Then she told me her full name and the city she was buried in. It was nearby. We spent a little more time together. I grew restless, but did my best to enjoy every last hour. Well, Farah, it's time. She kissed my nose. I had a great time with you. Thank you so much. If you see my daughter, please tell her to visit more. And she quietly walked away. I had seen her naked body, so I knew she probably had kids, but you know, it's not something you think about when you look at that. Was I in love with a dead girl? Deciding to seize the time I still had that day, I started searching for her. It was easy to find the cemetery, so I drove myself there. After looking for a while, I finally found a beautiful white marble grave. Lisa had been beloved in life. Next to it, sat a familiar figure with a posy of yellow roses. The sound of my footsteps might have startled her, and she abruptly turned in my direction. Then her face relaxed in a smile. She had been crying. Farah, it's so good to see you here. I didn't know you knew where your great-grandmother was buried, said my grandmama. She died young, and now I'm the only daughter left. I actually dreamed of her, I said, my face beat red from the terrible realization. She asked you to visit more. Grandmama was now openly crying, clearly touched. I will, sweetie. It's so good to know. Sometimes I have the feeling she's still with me. She hugged me very tightly. What were you doing in your dream? I was now crying too. But these were tears of embarrassment.
Today I messed up by walking in my son's room without knocking. So I messed up by going to tell my child, 14 male, good night. This actually happened a few weeks ago, but I am now strong enough to tell the tale. Everyone else was asleep, and I wanted to pop in and tell my oldest good night before bed. I opened the door and instantly made eye contact. I noticed his eyes were twice the size of normal, almost in a cartoonish manner. Then I noticed his hand, and what it was doing. For about a second, we were both frozen in a what do I do state while staring at each other, and I shut the door and ran to bed thinking maybe he doesn't need a good night after all. I lay in bed thinking, my eyes, debating on whether sleeping would remove this image in my brain or just using a Brillo pad directly to them would. I mean, who needs their vision anyway, right? Maybe it's my fault for not knocking, maybe he should have locked the door, maybe I should avoid him for the entirety of his continued childhood. The next day after work, I sit him down and asked if we should talk about the thing no one wants to talk about, and he responded with, please no. I told him it was okay, but it could have easily been anyone, including his younger siblings, and in the future, maybe lock the door or use a room with much better locks like the bathroom. He looks embarrassed. I told him I wasn't sure what he was upset about, considering I was the one who had to boil my eyeballs to scour this vision from my memory, which of course gets him laughing. When it came time for me to tell him good night that night, I knocked loudly, slowly opened the door, knocked some more, slowly poked my head in, and knocked again. He was playing on his laptop and couldn't stop laughing. I'm glad he found so much humor in my actions and can feel unashamed in this situation. I will continue to knock and try to forget what I saw, but I don't think I'll forget how his eyes grew 3 times the size that night. It was like the Grinch's heart. I didn't think humans' eyes could get so big. All this being said, I love my kid, and well, everybody poops, so I'm not upset. I just live every day with a firm grasp on knocking from here on out.
I take my girlfriend to Pound Town, but it's not enough. Hear me out. I'm 21, she's 23, female. We have been together for about 3 years now and I've never been satisfied with our intimacy life. The intimacy is good, but I have a decently high intimacy drive. I could do it every day if she wanted to. She only wants to have intimacy a few times between 3 months. We've had multiple conversations about this. The first time we talked about this, she told me that she had a really high intimacy drive. Now when I found out that wasn't true, I had a conversation with her and she said, I don't know what happened, my intimacy drive used to be really high. The conversation has been had more than 10 times. I don't want to push the topic, so I don't bring it up often. Yesterday we had a conversation and it has evolved. She has a new stance on the matter and I don't know how to take this. She said, I don't think intimacy is important to a relationship, it's optional. And this doesn't really affect me, it only affects you now. I think it's completely fair to have this opinion. I don't want to pressure her, but I do wish that this is the stance she leads with, and now I'm 3 years down the line with a kid. She is 100% entitled to say what she wants to do with her body and I will listen 100% of the time. This conversation, though, has left me in a state where I don't know what to do. Because of my high intimacy drive, when she says, no, I'm kinda just left here and I'm starting to feel resentful. If this is her stance, I don't know if I want to marry her. The only reason why I haven't is because of our intimacy life. It just sucks. I need opinions because I love this woman and my family to death. I just don't know if I can move past this difference. Please, some advice would work wonders. Edit, let me just address some things that I keep seeing. 1. Is she on medication that may affect her drive? It hasn't been like this since we were together too. Is she seeing someone else? I'm 99.99999% sure she isn't. It's pretty damn impossible we are right next to each other all the time. 3. Her intimacy drive has always been like this. She didn't suddenly change, she told me it was high at one point. I've never seen it. I know she enjoys our intimacy a lot as well. Update 1, her stance has changed again. So I brought this thread to her and we started looking. Here's what I realized. 1. It's not me, she says I'm really good in bed, it's not me. 2. She never wanted to find a solution. She feels like, because of past medical problems, she doesn't want to even try and find a solution because of the fact that she feels like she's always the problem and she's tired of it. Once I started to actively look for a solution, then she would tell me that she doesn't want to find a solution because she is afraid that she is the problem once again. We have history but no cheating, kinda. We talk about everything, though she feels like most of the time she is the problem and she doesn't want to take any active steps to fix it. She wants to let her body run its course. She doesn't want to get her hormones tested. She doesn't want to try therapy, she feels like it's too extreme. Because this isn't a real problem. We're going to have a serious conversation in a bit. I'll be back then. I yell at my brother and make him pay when he eats my food. I'm a 17-year-old girl who is balancing 2 jobs in senior year while my 24-year-old brother has no job and lives upstairs in our attic with his girlfriend who also has no job. They'll sometimes go deliver food, but they spend all of that money on alcohol. My mother pays all the bills and sometimes buys groceries, but that gets a little hard with all my senior fees she pays, plus I go to a private school, so that's more money. Ever since I got my job, I started to buy myself and my mother food so we could have something to eat for the week. I started noticing my brother coming down into the kitchen multiple times a day and the food would be gone that night. If I bought food Monday, all of it would be gone by Wednesday morning. We began hiding the good food, but eventually, he'd find that and eat it. I even wrote my name and do not eat on stuff, but that didn't stop him either. Once he ate all the food, that was it until the next week I'd get paid and we'd only have bread, pasta and cheese to eat for that week. About a month ago I went to the doctor and found out I lost a substantial amount of weight in 3 months, and I decided to put my foot down since my mother never would. Every time he'd eat anything I text him a fee for the food. I'd keep nagging him and he'd eventually pay me back. Well, about 2 days ago I bought a case of a weight gain protein drink. Nobody else in my house would have any reason for drinking them. The next day when I woke up, the whole pack of 6 was gone. The empty case was left in the fridge. I exploded and called him and his girlfriend losers who needed to get out. I let 3 years of anger out and lost it. I told them they both owe me over $1,000 worth of food for these past years, and I left before he could respond. While at school, my mom and grandparents kept texting me about how I was out of line and how family doesn't treat each other like this, but I can't find it in myself to care. I asked my friends what they thought and there were mixed opinions, but the majority said I was out of line and should have let my mother handle it. What made you realize your best friend was actually a complete a-hole? When she told me she was cheating on her husband, and then I found out she was cheating with my husband. I was going through a really ugly breakup that left me in a very low point in my life. I was getting a lot of advice from my best friend on the whole situation. I told him that it would take time for me to get over her, as it was a relationship of over 2 years. 3 days after the breakup I check Snap Maps and see that he is at my ex's apartment. It was 2 in the morning. He initially lied about it but then admitted to hooking up with her. I started crying over the phone and he literally said, "I just want you to know that I'm sorry this is hurting you, but I'm going to continue doing this with her." I lost my best friend of 22 years over that. It's crazy to me that one day, a friend who was a brother to me, just snapped and ignored me in a really dark state of mind, just so he could get laid. When he got his girlfriend pregnant, he got 6 weeks of paternity leave. He lived with me and she had her own place. For months after the child was born, he sat home taking advantage of his paid vacation, playing 10 hours of video games a day, while she struggled with the child. When she threw a hissy fit after I said something along the lines of, "If he cheats on his wife with you, what do you think is going to stop him from cheating on you with someone else?" Apparently I'm not supportive? What is the creepiest thing that's happened to you while home alone? I thought I was being haunted. When I found out what it really was, I was even more horrified. I was home alone for the weekend when I was in high school, which was exciting for me as I never really had the house to myself ever. I had a few people over on Friday night, and we got hammered like high schoolers. The next night it was just me home alone in my house. I had a case of beers left over and had a movie to watch, so I decided that the hangover would not keep me down and to party by myself and have an awesome night. I ended up getting way too drunk and felt hungry. I decided to cook a mad feed and started whipping up pasta in a drunken slur. I was singing like a maniac while I played MasterChef in my kitchen. Halfway through singing and stirring the pasta sauce, I hear a tapping sound and some movement in the corner of my eye catches my attention. One of the metal chain ropes used to pull the blinds up and down on the glass doors was moving and hitting the glass door, making a tapping sound. I froze as I watched it moving back and forth by itself. Then my focus kind of zoomed out as I realized that that was not the only metal blind ropes that were moving. We have around 7 sets of blinds on the glass doors and all 7 of the ropes were moving back and forth. My hair stood up and I walked out of the kitchen as all of them were tapping on the glass doors. No windows or doors in the house were open and they were picking up momentum, with the tapping becoming louder and more frequently. I turned around just in time to see the DVD case of the movie I was watching slide off the TV cabinet on its own. I let out a slurred "Fuck that," and went to bolt outside, just freaking out. On the way out I saw the painting next to the front door. It had been moved and was tilted. I let out a gasp. I ran out the door and wet myself just a little in the process. It was real, the horror was real, this was real. Outside I was so distraught and horrified at what had just happened. My house was haunted. There was a ghost and it was messing with me. It didn't like me. I realized that I had left the stove on, and in order to leave I also needed to grab my phone to call someone and get out of there. I decided I would go to the park and try to contact a friend. So I psyched myself up, ran into the house, turned off the stove, ran into my room, grabbed the key, my phone and 10 beers. I headed to the park and started drinking again. No one picked up as everyone was wiped out from the night before. Cut a long story short, I vaguely remember being at the park before I blacked out, then in my kitchen crying at some point, then blank. The next day I woke up in my bed. I wondered whether it was just a dream, but I walked out and saw the pasta and DVD case and realized that it was legit. I realized that I had to break the news to my family later that day that our house was haunted and that we would have to move. I went on Facebook and that's when I saw status after status saying that there had been a minor earthquake during the night. I was horrified with my own stupidity. To be fair, that was the first earthquake I had experienced, and we don't get earthquakes where I live very often. What's the worst thing strangers ever made you do at a party? A couple months ago, I was at this lame butt party and decided to go outside with a friend for a smoke. We were out there for about 10 minutes before we headed back inside. When we got back in, everyone had moved to the basement where there was a bar set up. My friends all disappeared and I was left alone with some randoms. Feeling like an outsider, I decided to leave, but as soon as I stepped out the door someone handed me a shot glass filled with some clear liquid that smelled like rubbing alcohol. Everyone around me told me not to drink it because they didn't know what it was or how strong it was, but then someone pushed me and said just drink it already. In my drunken state, peer pressure got the best of me, so I chugged the whole thing without knowing what the F it even contained, later finding out that it was 1/4 cup vodka mixed with water. It tasted effing disgusting, but whatever. Then these people who had been pushing me to drink this poop revealed that it wasn't even vodka. They started laughing at my expense, which made my blood boil. Strangers who knew nothing about me were laughing at something they forced me into doing. It made them seem so heartless and cruel, like they didn't give two shits about anyone else's safety or well-being as long as they could get their kicks from watching other people suffer through their stupid games. The whole situation left me feeling confused and disgusted by their lack of empathy.
An unexpected guest stole our Thanksgiving turkey. So, we hosted Thanksgiving this year. It was my husband and I, our 2 kids, my husband's siblings and nieces and nephews, and most importantly, my husband's gravely ill mother. We're all at peace that this Thanksgiving and Christmas will probably be our last holidays together. It's been emotional and exhausting, but we really wanted to make a memorable day that everyone would enjoy. Our daughter Mary is visiting from college, and one day before she flew in, she says her boyfriend Chris is actually flying to our city to visit friends over the break. Mary asked if he could come over for Thanksgiving. We've never met Chris before, but to be honest, we're not wild about him. As soon as Mary started dating him, we started seeing some worrying changes in her. Our son, who is just a couple years older, confided in us that Mary is getting into the party scene largely because of Chris. We've tried gently bringing up our concerns with Mary, but she shuts it down and has started to pull away from us. So because we didn't want to alienate her, we said Chris could visit, but they'd need to stay in separate rooms. She said that won't matter because he's booked a hotel room and she'll be staying there with him the whole weekend. Okay. Cut to Thanksgiving, when Mary and Chris arrive. He's not the greatest. He makes a couple rude and snide remarks throughout the visit, and hits the alcohol way harder than is appropriate. My family was in a very serious mood, if that makes sense. There was lots of emotion. And he was just very dismissive and disrespectful, and he casted a shadow on everything. At one point, everyone started telling stories about their favorite holidays at mother-in-law's house when she would go all out for family parties. My husband and I stopped working in the kitchen to join the conversation. When we go back to the kitchen after maybe half an hour, I went to check the turkey in the oven, and it was gone. Completely missing. I asked my husband if he did something with the turkey, and he was just as confused as I was. We looked all over the kitchen and house and couldn't find it. We go out to the living room and ask everyone if they know what happened to the turkey, and no one knows what we're talking about. At this point I realize Chris isn't around. I pull Mary to the side and ask where he is, because I don't want to jump to conclusions and make accusations. She said he had to leave to go meet up with friends. I asked her to text him and ask if he knows what happened to the turkey, and Mary kind of rolled her eyes. At this point it's dawning on me that Chris probably stole the turkey and left out the back door while we were sharing stories with mother-in-law, but I'm just so confused why anyone would do something like that. I can't bring myself to actually make the accusation out loud. So we were left in the terrible position of having everything else ready, but no turkey. We had to break it to the family that we had no turkey, and everyone is confused and sad. Mary said she had to get going to an event with Chris, which deeply disappointed me. I told her as much, and she just said she'll see us again later this weekend. My in-laws went driving around to restaurants and grocery stores and pieced together enough stuff that we were able to have a meal much later than expected, but it felt like the whole day was ruined. Everyone was kind of murmuring about Chris leaving around the time the turkey disappeared, but no one wanted to actually accuse him out loud because it's such an explosion allegation, and there's not actually any proof. I'm just confused why anyone would do such a thing, and heartbroken because my mother-in-law didn't deserve this at all. At one point she teared up but pulled it together. I'm also increasingly angry with my daughter, but I feel like I can't say anything because she'll just pull away more. Quick update, I was talking with my son today and he told me that last night Chris started taunting him over text about the missing turkey. So that settles it. Chris stole the turkey basically as a big screw you to all of us. My son didn't say anything at the time because he didn't want to make people more upset than they already were. One of husband's siblings is very mad at us for how things turned out and how mother-in-law was disrespected. That sibling is not talking with us right now. I've tried calling and texting Mary, but she is so far ignoring me. That's all I have to say about this. Update 1 year later. Hi everyone, this incident has been on my family's mind this week and my son encouraged me to write an update. Last year I hoped to talk with Mary in person about what Chris did, but she blew me off and didn't visit home for the rest of Thanksgiving weekend. We spoke briefly on the phone a few days later, but she denied that Chris stole our turkey, even though Chris taunted my son about it, basically admitting what he did. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. The ripple effects were profound. Our family expected her to live through Christmas, so it was very difficult to lose what we thought would be her last holiday. And it was even more bitter that the Thanksgiving that was her actual last holiday was ruined by Chris and his incomprehensible theft. From there it got even worse. Mary flew in for my mother-in-law's funeral and mentioned that Chris might travel with her to see a concert in our city. We made it clear that he was not welcome in our home or at the funeral. He ultimately stayed at their college. But on the day of the visitation, a bomb threat was made against the funeral home and we all had to evacuate while the police conducted a search. The police were never able to prove it, but I strongly suspect Chris made the threat. My mother-in-law's visitation was cut significantly short and she was denied a dignified end. Some people who wanted to pay their respects ultimately could not because of the evacuation and inspection. One of my husband's siblings has gone no contact with us because they blame my husband and I for ruining the end of mother-in-law's life by inviting Chris to Thanksgiving last year. Mary refused to take any responsibility for how her relationship with Chris has damaged our family. We, husband and I and Mary, have mutually decided to go no contact. My son has minimal contact with Mary and follows her on social media. Apparently Mary and Chris are still together. I'm sorry I have such a sad update, but my family and I are very grateful for all the support we received last year. Thank you.
Does it mean I'm gay if I'd give a guy a Slurpee for $1 million? My girlfriend thinks so and might break up with me. I've been dating my girlfriend for just under a year. Things have been going great and I felt like we were still getting closer every day until this situation popped up. A few days ago, my girlfriend and I were at a party with friends, and there was a new guy there. He seemed charming and nice, but when the topic of women came up, he said it's been years since he had any luck and he was going a little crazy. The conversation moved on and that was the end of that topic. Last night in bed, I was talking with my girlfriend before bed and we started to discuss the party. The new guy comes up and we agree he seemed cool and we were both surprised he was having a hard time with women. I mentioned his comment about it being years since being with anyone and said I bet he's going nuts. My girlfriend laughed and said that maybe one of her friends would give him a pity gawk gawk. I pointed out that at the party he said he loves the movie Amelie, her favorite movie ever. I like it too, so maybe that was worth a gawk gawk. That probably sounds weird to people reading this, but it was a joking conversation along the lines of how we make fun of each other. She laughed. Anyway, she said he was cute in a way, but not her type. She wouldn't blow him for $1 million. I thought this was extreme and said if she wouldn't do it for $1 million, I certainly would. Hell, money is money and it would just be a few minutes probably. I was laughing, but now she wasn't. She stared at me and asked if I was serious. I said yes, that's a life-changing amount of money for something people do every day. She sat up and said that nobody who is straight would do that for any amount of money. She asked if I was gay. I said no. She asked if I would give her brother a gawk gawk for $1 million and I said probably. She got angry and went to sleep. I thought that was the end of it, but this morning she told me she didn't want me to be at her place today and she needed time to think. She said she saw a future with me but is worried that I would eventually leave her for a man after years of lying to myself. I tried to convince her that my response was normal, but she wasn't having it. I texted my friend and asked if he would give me a gawk gawk for $1 million. He replied only if I don't have to give you any money. My girlfriend said he's probably gay too and it makes sense that you hang out with him. So now I'm home and maybe girlfriend less. So, fellas, once and for all, is it gay to give a gawk gawk for $1 million? I told my girlfriend that she makes everyone uncomfortable. My 29F best friend Mark, 31 meters, has been dating this girl, 18F, for about 3 months now and she is the most attention-grabbing person. Every time I see her she's in the most revealing outfits. I know Mark, we've been friends since high school and there's no way he's comfortable with that. When we first started being friends he even said part of the reason was that I wasn't fussy and could be casual with the rest of the guys. Now this girl comes along and she's the complete opposite of what he wants. So on to the night, our friend group decides to go out clubbing/drinking together and of course Mark had to invite that girl. When I saw her I was completely shocked. She was in a short black mini dress, it was low cut and obviously without a bra and it was skin tight and so short. She was wearing it with sheer stockings and these ridiculous platform knee-high boots. She looked like a SLT. I'm the only girl in the group so I dress accordingly. I could tell our guy friends were checking her out and so were random men. I know Mark can't be comfortable with that. When we got to the club I asked her to come to the bathroom with me and then I told her off. I said the way she dresses makes everyone uncomfortable and it was inappropriate for her to look like that in a relationship. She got mad at me and said Mark knew how she dressed before they started dating and she had larger breasts and wide hips that were noticeable regardless so she may as well show them off and look good. That made me see red. She didn't have to rub in that she had this hourglass figure and I called her on it. Said she looked like a whore, that may have gone over the line but she deserves it, and I said she probably was one. She yelled at me and said just because I dressed like a frigid bitch doesn't mean she had to. That comment was so hurtful to me I said Mark deserved better and left. The rest of the night she was engaging in lots of PDA with Marks. More than usual just to get under my skin. Her behavior made me leave because I couldn't watch Mark fall for that manipulation. The next day he texted me angrily saying that if I wanted to keep being friends with him I had to apologize to her. I tried to say I was defending him but that girl already has him wrapped around her. I'm posting because I'm wondering if I should apologize and bide my time or be there for him from afar once they break up since maybe my comments were too harsh right now.
My husband has a gym girlfriend and refuses to let her go. On Father's Day I noticed my husband texting and smiling with someone, ignoring or not seeing me when I invited him to the table for breakfast. I got closer so he could notice me and saw he was texting an unknown woman. We've been married for 4 years and have a preschooler and a 1-year-old, and our relationship has been strong up to this point. I didn't bring it up besides asking who is that, since my mom was in town visiting. When I mentioned it later, I said I didn't know making friends of the opposite intimacy and not saying anything was okay for us. He didn't volunteer anything but when pressed further mentioned that he'd been working out with her, which I know is 4 days a week for 3 hours before work most mornings. He ended up admitting he didn't tell me about her because he knew I'd be mad, moreover that he'll be working out with whoever he wants. Fast forward several one-sided, vulnerable conversations and 2 months after a lot of feeling sick to my stomach and sleepless nights, I finally laid it out. I didn't give him an ultimatum, I simply told him I can't sleep, that I feel heartbroken and constantly concerned, that if I was doing the same he'd feel awful. And crickets ensued. I asked how long it was going to last and was met with, "There's no sign-up sheet in the gym." I told him I can't imagine continuing our relationship feeling like this and needed to know in words how he felt. He reported feeling the same, that I'm his wife and he loves me. My boundary is unacknowledged and so far, unenforced. It's not that I think he's put his PP in her yet, it's that he won't budge or say anything knowing I'm hurting. Edit. I found texts on his phone and they confirmed he indeed has been sleeping with her. I'm filing for divorce. My husband violated my body right after I gave birth to our child, please help. For those of you who don't know, a husband stitch is an extra stitch done on the VA after birth to make it tighter for the husband. I, 25F, gave birth a year ago and my husband, 34 meters, who was a surgeon at the hospital I delivered, was asked by his colleague, the obgyn, if he wanted an extra stitch. My husband said yes because he thought it would make intimacy better for the both of us. I had zero idea what had been doomed to be, all I know is I was in pain afterward. Since it was my first kid I was not sure if it was normal or not. I kept asking the nurses why I was in so much pain and one told me it might be because of the husband stitch. This was the first time I ever learned about a husband stitch and I asked the nurse to explain what it was to me. I felt totally disgusted and violated. I thought at first the delivery doctor had just done it and I wanted to report him, but then my husband admitted that he had agreed to it. This wasn't the first time a man violated my body, I was a touching victim as a child. But this was the first time it was someone I loved. When I told him how I felt about what he had done, my husband became extremely angry. He said he did it for both of us and he didn't think it was such a big deal, that he didn't know it would cause issues. I pointed out he was a neurosurgeon and he said he wasn't an obgyn. The fight got ugly, I screamed at him to get out, and in the end, I had to be sedated. I had the same reaction every time he tried to see me. So for the whole time I was at the hospital, 3 weeks because of a slow recovery, I didn't see him. Now my son has turned a year old and things between us are non-existent, I only talk to him about our son. We sleep in different rooms and I don't let him so much as kiss me. He is very remorseful, especially as he saw how much it affected my recovery. He genuinely thought it was okay as the college presented it as it will make the intimacy better. But why would a tighter VA feel better for women? That only feels good for men. He has asked for couples therapy, which I have refused. I have taken up freelancing, so I am making some of my own money. My husband thinks I am doing that because I plan to leave him, as I was initially dependent on him. He's partially right, I don't see myself getting over this. I am NC with my family and I live in his country. I have no friends but his friends, no family but his. Everyone is on me to make things right. They say he was wrong, but I can't hold one mistake over his head. My current country isn't exactly known for women's rights, femicide is more common here than you might think. I am also on a spouse visa. I can't leave him until my son is at least old enough to remember me. Because if I leave there is a 90% chance I will lose custody. What should I do in the meantime to make our relationship bearable?
Would you accept $10 million for 3 inches off your D? Why or why not? Mother effer want me to go into negative D. Yeah, he wants you to go into D debt. Can I buy 3 inches for 10 mil? For 10 mil you don't need the 3 inches, all I got is 3 inches, what the F do I need 10 mil for if I ain't got no inches left? That means you become a woman, so you'd actually only get $7.7 million. Waiters, what is the worst Valentine's Day disaster you've ever seen? I used to work at this fancy Mediterranean bistro, and let me tell you, Valentine's Day was crazy busy. We had reservations for the whole place, from the dining area to the bar and patio. From 4 p.m. until 11 p.m. we didn't have any room for walk-ins unless someone canceled their reservation or didn't show up. Most customers were understanding and patient. They either waited or left without causing a fuss. But there was this one guy who kept bugging us every 10 minutes, asking when he'd be seated. He claimed to be a regular customer and said his date would arrive at 7. He showed up at 6. We explained that we'd seat him as soon as a table became available and everyone ahead of him was seated. With so many reservations, we couldn't guarantee him a table at all. At around 6:50, the guy loses it. He marches up to the hostess stand, snatches the reservation book, and runs away with it, bolting straight out the front door. Now things are a total mess because the only copy of the reservations for the night is gone, and we're not even halfway through the rush. 2 of the owners sprint outside to chase the guy and try to get the book back. But he had already left the parking lot by the time they got out there. And guess what? 2 hours later, when chaos is still in full swing, the dude shows up again, claiming he has a reservation for 2. 3 out of the 5 owners walk him and his date out to the parking lot and ban him from the restaurant forever. They even took a picture of him and put it in the window with a sign that says, "Do not ever serve this man." I can only wonder what his date was thinking when she pieced together what happened.
My ex shat in my dishwasher. This is probably the weirdest thing I've ever written, and I have no idea if this sub is the right place to write this, but here I go. I had a LDR with a dude 12 hours away. We dated for almost 6 months and it was pretty serious. He was pretty weird tbh, we had our flaws. I'm autistic, so talking on the phone was hard, and also just communicating every single day about meatless stuff was a big problem. He was very petty and got mad over small stuff and also didn't tell me for days. But whatever, I'll just tell you what that fucker did. So he'd come to me for 2 weeks or something, And this particular day I decided that I wanted to cut a mullet. He had told me he needed to poop the whole day and I told him he could use the toilet anytime, obviously. So I was standing inside my bathroom, music on, cutting my hair. He told me he could do the dishes before my mom came home and I said thank you. So there I stood cutting my hair when I wanted to hear what he thought of it so far. I walked to my kitchen and felt a weird smell when I got to the doorway. I thought my mom had made some weird food and my boyfriend had just dumped it out in the compost. But then I walk in more and what the fuck do I see? I see him standing by the dishwasher, pants down, staring at me with big eyes. I give him that up and down look you always got in high school, and I catch something weird in the dishwasher. A big, watery, brown puddle of diarrhea. I'm saying this one more time. Poop in my dishwasher. I was so shocked I just turned around and yeeted into my bathroom, frantically cutting my hair. No thoughts, head empty. That fucker started the fucking dishwasher, and the shit ran in the crevices. My whole kitchen smelled like shit for a week. And that night when he was asleep I scrubbed all of the dishes for hours. I've never confronted him about it and I'm happy we're broken up now. Thank you for reading this highly unusual story time.
Has anyone ever did something so dumb you thought they were intellectually impaired? I was on a work trip in Dallas and was at the hotel bar with my boss and a coworker from another office of our company. After a few drinks, we started talking about religion and what role it plays in society. After some polite banter, realizing that maybe we all disagreed a little bit, I made a joke that amounted to, well, at least we all believe dinosaurs existed. My boss was a geology major in college, so he laughed a bit, agreeing with what I had said. And then the crazy happened. The coworker turned to me and just said, "How do you know?" It was my first experience with an evangelical Christian who failed to believe that dinosaurs existed millions of years ago. My boss quickly tried to change topics, but I had science behind me, so I kept trolling. Q. Well, when did they exist then? A. Roughly the time of early man or about 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. I kept going. Q. What about the fossil record? Why are no humans on the same level as dinosaurs? If they lived together, they must have died together. A. That's not conclusive. And then came the full-on wackadoodle. Q. If we're to believe in carbon dating and the fossil record, then humans couldn't have lived at the time of the dinosaurs, right? A. I'm sorry, but carbon dating and the fossil record are tools of the devil. If he can get us to believe that the Bible isn't true, we'll start to doubt God. The devil created those things to help destroy our belief in Jesus. As a British person visiting the US, this shocked me. I should point out that this happened to a friend of mine, not to myself, but I still reckon that it is one of the most ridiculous examples of this sort of incident. Linda was traveling through the southern states. At the time of the incident, she was in Texas, and bearing in mind that this was a few years ago, a large part of the money that she had was in traveler's checks. Anyway, she had called to cash some of the checks in order to ensure she had sufficient cash to cover small purchases over the next few days. So she walks into one of the larger downtown banks, approaches the cashier, and asks if it is possible to do so. And the fun starts. First, the cashier asks if Linda had an account with that branch. Clearly not, as she was there to cash a traveler's check. Then she was asked to present a form of ID, so Linda presented her UK passport and driver's license. Cashier was not satisfied with these as they were not valid. Not US passport or DL. Linda pointed out that obviously, as she was trying to cash a traveler's check, the implication ought to be obvious that she was not a US national and therefore would not therefore have US identity papers. At which point, the cashier diplomatically throws back Linda's passport and license, disdainfully dismissing them as rubbish. Fortunately, at this point, the manager becomes involved. He takes over, bawls out the cashier for her ignorance, and takes over dealing with the transaction. He then passes back her papers, along with the required cash, while explaining to the cashier the value of a British passport. Hopefully, lesson learned. Family friends perspective, am I the jerk for trying to get back into my kids' lives? I know exactly who this is. I know the kids and the dad. Those kids were raised by a wolf pack. When this pathetic waste of oxygen abandoned her kids, basically anyone and everyone who had a passing relation to the dad stepped up. His mom moved in for the first year to help with the babies. Neighbors, friends and relatives all donated or bought kids' stuff for them. Clothes, diapers, toys, anything he needed. One of his friends manages a restaurant and he brought them unused food almost every night. I work at a bank, so I had nothing useful to contribute other than money and time. One of our buddies runs an MMA gym, and he has a kids class that starts after school, so he take them in after school until their dad gets off work. Whenever the kids need a babysitter, 2 or 3 rowdy men show up ready to be horsies or punching bags for the boys and tea party guests for the little girl. One of our other friends is a lawyer. He helped him gaining custody and advised him through the process. Ops parents are rich and they always offer money to help. On the advice of our lawyer friend, he always refuses. That way they can't use that in any future custody battle. He didn't even let them introduce themselves as their grandparents, so they can't claim a relationship. Their dad is doing well now. Those kids don't want for anything. Every Sunday night, he hosts us to watch football and hang out with the kids. His daughter delights in serving everyone wheat juice. There's so much better of without this witch. What is something horrifying you found under a bridge? This wasn't me, and it was as much weird as horrifying. In June 2008, an 88-year-old retired nurse named Mary Ferns left her house in Livingston, West Lothian, saying she was going into the town center to buy tights. Everyone assumed she meant Livingston Town Centre, about a mile from her home, but she never came home. CCTV showed her in Edinburgh, 25 miles away, heading towards Waterloo Place where she would have been able to get a bus back to Livingston, or to any of 100 other places, so it looked as if she decided to go into Edinburgh to shop instead of to Livingston. Between central Livingston and her home there are several routes which cross over bridges, and at the sides of the bridges there are steep slopes covered with bushes, leading down to the water. It was natural to wonder if she had returned to Livingston, set off to walk home instead of getting a local bus for such a short journey, had a heart attack or stroke while approaching a bridge, and rolled down into the bushes, but dogs couldn't find her. Then in April 2011 a skeleton was found under one of the bridges, and everyone assumed it was hers, but it turned out to be someone else entirely, a man who had been missing for 15 years, and who had evidently sat down under the bridge to get out of the rain, and then had a heart attack or stroke of his own. Mary Ferns, meanwhile, has never been found. We don't know if she was murdered, or met with an accident, or whether, despite her age, she chose to go missing. Parents, when did you realize your kid might be terminally stupid? A couple years ago my son was complaining one morning before school that his ear was clogged. My other son gets an insane amount of ear wax, so I have all different ear wax things to clean them out. I'm using the liquid and start squirting warm water in to clear any ear wax. As I'm looking into his ear with a flashlight I see a popcorn kernel. This was literally 5 minutes before we had to leave to bring him and his brother to school. So I take my older son to school and explain to the secretary I will be bringing my other son to the walk-in because he has a popcorn kernel stuck. So we get to the doctor's and she's looking in his ears, and the other ear she's telling me looks like the wax is green. The one that had the kernel, and she's saying she doesn't see anything but she will try to flush it. But she's more concerned about the one with the green ear wax because it might be infected. She starts flushing and nothing. I'm telling her I freaking saw it and it's in there. She starts flushing again and bam. Out pops the damn popcorn kernel. She sends us home with a prescription for an antibiotic because she's still concerned with the other ear and to come back in a week. As we are leaving he's shocked at how much he can hear. How he can hear his footsteps and everything. I start asking him when he did that because I can't remember the last time we had popcorn. At this time it was the end of September. He starts telling me that during the summer when we were watching all the Star Wars movies is when he did it. This kid had a popcorn kernel shoved in his ear for 2 months and never complained or said anything. I decide I'm going to keep him home for the rest of the day and we go home, and before I fill his prescription I take a look in his other ear. As I'm looking I can see the green she's talking about and I feel like I can grab it with some tweezers. It's pretty close to the opening. I grab some tweezers. And after a couple of very careful attempts out comes a green ball of fuzz from his blanket. I look back in the ear and it is now completely clear. My son was not only walking around for 2 months with a popcorn kernel stuck in his ear, but also a ball of fuzz stuck in the other.
My best friend's brother made my cat yelped in pain after he shot it with a gun, so I slapped him across the face and made him cry too. I slapped an obnoxious kid across the face because he shot my cat. I regret nothing when he collapses on his butt and starts crying. A couple of weeks ago, I was babysitting my best friend's brother. I usually can't stand kids, but my friend was on the verge of a breakdown, so I offered to take the kid off his hands so he could finish his art school project and relax. Before anyone asks, they don't come from the most stable of families. Their parents are divorced and barely around to care for either of them. Hence, I offered first because I know my friend has been running himself thin lately. Anyway, I took the kid back to my house because there isn't much to do around here, and I'm a broke student. On the trip back, he was already acting obnoxious, asking me if I ate my dog because I'm Asian and referring to me as a female every single time we talked. My mom was out running errands and meeting with some of her friends, so it was up to me to watch him. I asked him if he wanted to play a board game or video games, and he said no. I asked if he wanted to kick a football around since I live in the countryside and there was plenty of space to play around, and he said no. By this point, I had no idea what the kid wanted, so I just kind of let him explore the house a bit, to which he stumbled across my BB gun. I'm from Europe, which is pretty self-explanatory. You don't come across BB guns, airsoft rifles, and such often, so naturally, he was fascinated with it. I explained that I don't use it to shoot even though I have pellets. I came with a gun, never used them, and that I only keep it around for cosplay reasons. I told him he couldn't shoot it because it was still a semi-dangerous piece of equipment. He threw a full-on tantrum at the ripe age of 11, screaming and crying, yelling and hitting crap, to which, after 5 whole minutes of this, I relented. I told him that he could shoot a few as long as he aimed at a big tree in the garden and only under my supervision. He agrees. I set up the gun. Now, I have 5 cats. One of them is a 12-year-old senior cat who spends his days lying around the garden under patches of sun. He's not slow per se, but he isn't what he used to be. I take the kid out and direct him to the tree. He fires, and all's good. My senior cat is lounging behind the kid, sleeping away and not bothering anyone. The kid turns to me and asks for some water, to which I say sure, don't fire, I'll be back. As I fill up the glass for him, I hear a loud yowl, like a noisy, pained yowl. I immediately dash outside and see the little cunt pointing the BB gun at my senior cat, who's lying there essentially screeching in agony. He'd shot my cat, and the absolute smug smirk on his face made me lose it. I stormed up to him and slapped him right across the face while simultaneously screaming at him. The waste of space had the gall, the audacity, to collapse on his ass and start crying and hiccuping. I scooped my cat up and cradled him, shushing and petting him as I called my mom and explained the situation, to which she came rushing back home, probably broke a couple of red lights, And took the cat to the vet. He's okay. The pellet didn't perforate into him or damage any organs, just got wedged halfway in the skin, painful and costly nonetheless. At the same time, it landed on me to take the crying kid back home. Nevertheless, there's a reason my best friend is my best friend. He lost it on a kid who thought his big brother was going to comfort him and tell him he didn't do jack crap.
Mental health workers, what's the most messed up thing you have seen? I'm a temp at this 50-bed skilled nursing facility. One day we get a new resident and she's a feisty one. I can't blame her. She was a hospital administrator, also an MD, who had made her way to the top. Rich as all get out. She was very recently diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. She's mid-50s. So this woman went from being a high-powered CEO physician to one bad diagnosis to nursing home resident in the scope of 2 weeks. She is pissed off in ways that I don't think I can fully comprehend and hope I never do. I don't think people fully appreciate the level of indignity that can occur with going into a skilled nursing facility. She's fully ambulatory. She seems fine during many interactions. But she has dementia and no family, and this is the only place the hospital could legally release her to. This woman walks in with a closet full of fancy suits and is presented a dining room where all of her new neighbors are wearing plastic bibs. We're trying to be cool. We're trying to be supportive. We're trying to help preserve her dignity every way we can. We call her doctor instead of by first name. We're trying to have her see us as colleagues rather than her caregivers. Ultimately, though, this can be a terrible adjustment on a good day. She had her entire world turned upside down in the scope of a few weeks. While many of her fellow residents are wheelchair-bound, she, as I mentioned earlier, is not. She's up and around, fully active and rather physically fit. So as part of this attempt to ease things, we have her hanging around the nurse's station rather than languishing in her room. We're talking about doctors we all know, war stories, everything is settling in nicely. Then one day, she's telling us a funny story. She stops midway through and springs up from her chair. I'm confused, I'm about to ask if she's okay. She, with incredible urgency, pulls her and tailor pants down to expose her ass, leans forward slightly and sprays yellow diarrhea all over the everything. She hits charts, she hits someone who was behind her, she got it into a coffee cup that was on the desk. The urge to shit was sudden and intense and she was determined not to shit her pants. Which I can appreciate on some level. Am I the jerk for not forgiving my fiancé for missing the birth of our daughter? My husband's girl best friend, we'll call her Madison, has never liked me, for reasons I guess I will never know. Anyways, my fiancé, we'll call him Michael, and I were having a hangout with a little bit of the friends that we shared. It was nearing the end of the night and Madison was the only friend left when Madison came out crying with Michael looking angry. I was around 9 months pregnant at the time. The thing that really caught my attention is when Michael called me a raging B word and a C word. Myself being a hormonal pregnant woman started crying at the name calling. I asked through my tears what was going on and he then proceeds to tell me about a text message I sent to Madison. In the message I told her to F off and about how Michael and I would not allow her near our child. I will admit that I did send this, but it was taken completely out of context. I only sent this text after the many racist text messages that she sent me talking about my child and I. I am biracial. Instead of hearing me out, Michael kicked me out of the house that we shared. His name was on the lease. Without arguing, I decided to leave, not wanting to start anything else. As I was walking out the door, I felt a cramp in my lower abdomen. I thought nothing of this because I was not due for another 3 weeks. When I flinched from the pain, Michael told me to stop faking. On the way to my mom's house, I felt a gush of water and immediately turned the car around so that I would make it to the hospital. While driving, I took out my phone to call Michael, but my call was quickly declined. At this point, I was in too much pain to call anyone else and arrived at the hospital. I pushed for 2 hours without an epidural and gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Grace Knoll. Giving birth without my fiancé by my side was the final straw for me. I decided to do something and post all the hurtful messages Madison sent me on Facebook. Maybe 45 minutes minus 1 hour later, Michael calls me asking me if we could talk. I inform him about my whereabouts and he shows up about 42 minutes later. He has tried to apologize multiple times, but I don't think I can forgive him. I went through the pain of pushing out an 8-pound baby by myself, all because he chose to believe his best friend without listening to his fiancé. Am I the jerk for not wanting to forgive him? My girlfriend's brother donated his heart to me, and we didn't find out until recently. I was born with a heart condition, some fucked up genetic thing that meant my ticker was always on the verge of tapping out. I spent most of my childhood in and out of hospitals, enduring endless surgeries and procedures. By the time I hit my mid-20s, it became clear that the only way I'd see 30 was with a new heart. In comes Jane. We met in our support group. She had lost her brother to a car accident years prior. He was an organ donor, and while she didn't know who received his organs, being part of this group gave her some sort of solace. We clicked instantly, two souls navigating through life's shit storms. Fast forward through 3 years filled with love and laughter. We were excitedly expecting our first child when things took a turn for the unexpected. Jane decided to dig into her brother's organ donation records as part of creating a family tree for our upcoming baby shower. She wanted to tell stories about her late brother to our child someday and thought knowing where his organs ended up might bring some closure. What she found rocked us both to our cores. Turns out, her brother's heart was beating inside me. The revelation hit like a effing freight train. The man whose heart gave me life, whose death had caused Jane so much pain. He was more than just some anonymous donor. He was my girlfriend's late sibling. Needless to say, the emotional fallout from this discovery was intense. Jane felt betrayed at first, not by me but by life itself. It seemed too cruel an irony for her liking. As for me, guilt surged through every vein in my body. I felt like I owed Jane an apology, though logically there wasn't anything either one could have done differently. But then something shifted within us both. After the anger subsided came an overwhelming sense of serendipity that bound us even closer together. It wasn't easy, there were nights when we held each other tightly as tears stained our pillows, but we weathered it together because that's what love is all about, holding on to each other even when you're falling apart yourself. In retrospect now though, it still boggles my mind how everything fell into place like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle, how every twist and turn led us here, readying ourselves for parenthood with hearts heavy yet hopeful all at once. As we prepare to welcome our little one into this world any day now. There's something oddly comforting knowing that part of Uncle Mike will live on within me, continuing its rhythmic dance within my chest, reminding us daily about second chances at life. About love. About resilience. So yeah, Reddit, life sure has its effed up ways, but sometimes those ways lead you right where you're supposed to be. How to deal with a narcissist family member. My husband is a narcissist who's been graping me and always manipulates anyone who gets close to him. The twist is that he's not as smart as he thinks he is. I have a sister who is a master manipulator, so his antics pale in comparison to her highly skilled maneuvers. One thing he does, is when he is backed into a corner he starts using random buzzwords and making vague complaints that make no sense. For instance, he was upset about something and my best friend offered some moral support. He replied back, "Fix my wife's broken logic." She was like, that was vague and condescending. First off, it's obvious that you can't fix someone else, let alone their logic, and what does he mean by broken logic? Does he mean I'm wrong about something? What's something? Is it a lot of things? Am I just wrong about everything? All the time? Is that what he means? And how is my friend supposed to fix that? Broken logic is one of his favorites. He also likes to say things like, "You don't act human, so why should I treat you like one?" Like, how am I not acting human? Or claiming I don't help him enough but refusing to give examples of how he would like me to help. We had a counselor who backed him into a corner on this one and insisted he give a suggestion on how I could help him more, and he just answered she could get smarter. That would help. Basically, since there was no answer he made up one that was as equally vague as the demand. He then said he'd like me to help more but I'm too stupid to do anything. That's his excuse. Then the counselor said if fighting about work, we manage a building, is getting in the way, why not ask me to stop working around the building? He was, of course, horrified by this unbelievably logical conclusion. But he didn't want me to stop working around the building. He wanted to continue getting my help and just not appreciating it and shitting all over me and blaming me for everything that went wrong. If I don't help, he has no one to blame for things when they go wrong and no one to complain about subpar help. But he had to agree with her to keep his cards in place. That was an awkward trip home after he said he no longer wants me helping around the building, but supposedly that just because I'm too stupid. We're getting divorced. His isn't even the worst part. And I'm not blameless here. I've forgiven the unforgivable. He habitually graped me until I broke up with him the last time. The only reason we got married, I think, was because impregnating me during a moment of weakness was his last-ditch effort to keep me around. And because I have forgiven the unforgivable, I have, in my own way, led him to believe that this treatment is acceptable. Recently I brought up the grape, and after a brief minute on considering trying to lie his way out of it, he realized there was no way lying would make the situation better or go away, admitted it, and then asked why I never brought it up in marriage counseling if it was such a big deal. You should have seen the look on his face when I told him I didn't want the counselor to force me to break up with you or make me file a police report. Counselors are required to report assault of any kind. I think that was the moment the walls came down around him. I told his mother, my mother, I told everyone what he did. Then I told him how I protected him for no good reason. Me and my toddler have been living with my mother ever since, and I will never worry about that 180-pound piece of shit ever again. My crazy religious mom is demanding I wear a chastity belt to stop me from touching myself. When I called the cops, they found out she was in a cult and arrested her. My family is crazy religious to the point they dedicated their entire lives to their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Growing up, my siblings and I had to go to church every single day, study the Bible and basically memorize every chapter. Then we would get quizzed on them and would get a beating if we ever got anything less than 100. Now, my mom is trying to control my bodily urges. I'm 15 and sometimes I have to rub one out. If I don't, I can't function properly because it'll be the only thing I can concentrate on. I'm deeply ashamed of it and I don't know if this is a normal guy thing. Recently, my mom caught me rubbing one out and she was disgusted with me. She ranted about me sinning, going to help, listening to the devil's temptation and all that. I tried to explain that I couldn't help myself, but she didn't care and has been persistent in getting me to stop. She grounded me, hid my stuff, and even took my door off. I've resorted to just doing it in the shower whenever I get the urge, but I guess she caught on or figured I was going to do that, so now she's decided to get some kind of device and put it on me so that I can't touch myself. I knew she was dead serious about it and it wouldn't be out of character for her, so I didn't even question it. She's always doing weird things like not letting us go to the hospital if we get hurt because the medicine isn't natural. My little brother got hurt really badly a year ago, and when he went to the hospital, he got in trouble for it. Honestly, her religion has definitely ruined our relationship, and it's not just because I can't touch myself whenever I please. Anyway, there's no way she can legally make me wear the device, can she? I don't have a dad and my mom's family is just going to side with her, so I went to my math teacher who I see as a father figure. I told him all about my mom wanting to put this device on me, and his first instinct was to call my mom, but I told him not to or else I'd run away and call the police if he did. Instead, he ended up calling the police, and to my surprise, they'd already been suspicious about our neighborhood. I had to tell them everything that happened, which was honestly really embarrassing, but I talked because it could help me out. We went back home with them and my mom wasn't home, but they searched the place for anything suspicious. There, they found illegal substances. I knew she was right across the street with a preacher, and before I knew it, my mom was coming out of the house with handcuffs. The police took me and my siblings to a shelter, which was honestly an upgrade from our house. My mom didn't take good care of us and barely talked to us if the topic of conversation wasn't Jesus. After a couple of days at the shelter and people hearing about what happened, there was one thing that they all collectively agreed upon: we were in a cult. The apartment we lived in housed all of the cult members, and a bunch of illegal things were going on there, like them taking substances all the time and sexually assaulting people. We've been notified that we will never go back to our mom, and she's being charged with several things. I also found out that the preacher was my dad. He was arrested as well with all the other cult members. I honestly can't believe all of this went down just because I wanted to rub one out in private. I work security at Disney World. Well, I did. I've been with the company for 23 years. The first 20 years I worked in the parks, nabbing shoplifters and rounding up people who were drinking too much for the heat. Occasionally there'd be a fight to break up, but people usually kept it pretty mild. The heat and walking was getting too much for me the last few years, so I asked to be transferred somewhere with AC, and the company moved me to one of their resorts. While the working conditions were 110% better as far as climate and comfort go, the guest issues were trickier, mainly domestics. I guess the expensive and stress of vacation got to a lot of people, and I'd be called by neighboring rooms because some mom and dad were yelling at each other. I'd try to suggest they take a nap or go do separate activities for a bit, and that would usually calm them down. But none of that is what I'm here for. I've got to get this out while I have time. 3 days ago I got a call from management. Apparently a couple of days before that, housekeeping had went into a room that should have been turned over that day. Turned over is when one guest leaves by about 11 a.m. and the next guest checks in around 3 p.m., and all of the guests' items were still in the room. Housekeeping made a note of it and moved on, but during the next 2 days when they entered the room, everything was still there and untouched. I went to check it out, and sure enough there was an empty room full of luggage, clothes, snacks, some toys, everything a family would need for vacation. The manager had already looked up the previous reservation, and it was for a family: dad, mom, 2 little kids. I tried to call the phone numbers they had given, but all I got was voicemail. We were a bit stumped, so I made the call that housekeeper could clean the room and take the family's personal items to be held until we got in contact with someone. I went digging into the reservation more. The family had arrived 5 days before housekeeping discovered all of their stuff. I found that the family had paid a parking fee and their vehicle description was listed. A quick walk of the parking lots and I had easily located their vehicle. So that ruled out a car accident or them deciding to just leave all their stuff behind. Next, I saw that they had bought a dining plan. This is when a guest prepays for all of their food. They're given a certain number of credits to use for meals. This family had only used 3 credits, and the last one was 2 days after they checked in. It appeared that the day they arrived, they got here late and probably just stayed on the resort. The next day they used 2 credits at Epcot. The second park day they used just 1 credit at Magic Kingdom, and it was at breakfast time. Now at Disney we have something called Magic Bands. Magic Bands are worn by the guests and act as a room key, park ticket, credit card, dining reservation payment, fast pass, a system used to bypass lines, and more. It took some work, but I was finally able to look up this family's fast pass history. The day they went to Magic Kingdom, they had breakfast at a restaurant in the park, rode a couple of rides, and then rode their last ride. It's a small world around 11 a.m. then nothing. Finally, it was time to bring in someone else on this. I called an old coworker at Magic Kingdom and asked him to pull security footage for It's a Small World at the time they rode it, and I made my way over there. When I got there, my friend was very confused, almost distraught, looking. He showed me what he found. There's usually a camera in the direction of where rides load and unload. The footage showed them scanning their bands to use fast passes for the ride and boarding the ride. The footage from the exit of the ride just showed the other people in their car exiting. They weren't there. Of course we thought the worst. Maybe one of the kids had fallen out and mom and dad and the other kid got off in the middle of the ride to help, and they all got injured or killed or stuck in machinery somewhere. So we shut down the ride. Middle of the damn day. Turned off that earworm music and turned up the lights. Me and my buddy walked that ride 3 times before we called in help. Eventually there was close to 10 cast members searching, and we didn't find shit except for 3 cell phones and a hat. I was right stumped. I've kept digging the past couple of days, and I'm not sure who to tell what I found next to. I've called the police and I suppose they're on the way, but the company has a way of covering up things like this, and I've decided I can't live with myself if I don't put out some type of warning. I kept digging into their reservation over the last couple of days, and today I noticed they had purchased Memory Maker. There are photographers all over the parks and cameras in a lot of the rides, and, with Memory Maker, the photos are all free. They automatically get added to a guest's Disney account when the system knows their picture has been taken. And the system always knows. Everyone's whereabouts are always known with the Magic Bands. Well, I opened up their Memory Maker photo album and, I swear, there's 732 pictures. The first 30 or so are pretty normal. Epcot, a few rides, in front of the castle. But the rest are all in It's a Small World. The rides only take 1 picture per go around. So it appears as though this family has ridden this ride over 700 times. The first picture was pretty normal. Everyone looked happy, it was busy day and a full car of guests. The next one is rough to look at. The car is empty except for this little family and they look so darn confused. The next 10 to 15 I can see dad getting angry, yelling. Mom is holding on to those 2 kids like her life depends on it, and you can see the kids getting increasingly upset, crying. And it goes on, and on, and on. After 50 or so it looks like they're trying to get out. In one the dad is missing. In another they're all gone. Maybe like they bailed early in the ride and tried to walk out, but in the very next one, they're all right back in that damn car. After around 450 or so, I only see the mom and kids. It's just when I look closely I can see dad, maybe just his body now, slumped down in one of the other seats. Since about 675, there's just mom and one kid. Another body in another seat. The mom and kid aren't moving anymore. I think them two are still alive, just damn near catatonic. Looking straight ahead, pale, and, y'all, I swear on my fucking life, the dolls are moving or something. In some of these pictures I can tell they aren't where they should be. I even saw one with a doll in the car with his family. I can't look anymore or I'm going to lose my lunch. I closed the album. Its file size has increased since I closed it. God, are there new pictures being added? I see on security cameras that the local PD just arrived, so they'll take over soon. I wish I knew what the fuck is going on, but I also wish this damn thing had never landed in my lap. I don't think I'll be able to update this. After I talk to the police, I think I'm going to walk out of here and never come back. I just wanted to get this out there, before Disney feeds the media some bullshit cover-up as to why a whole family vanished. They didn't vanish. I know where they are. Men of Reddit, what are some questions you've always wanted to ask women, but couldn't because it would seem weird? This is gonna end up on one of those TikToks with Subway Surfers gameplay, lol, or a car jumping off ramps in GTA 5, or Minecraft parkour. Weird one, but it's been bugging me. For women with pierced nipples, if you get pregnant and start lactating, does the milk also come out through the piercing holes? Does someone's job or profession change how attractive you find him? Do women get the pee shiver? I know sometimes I'll be peeing and there's an uncontrolled shiver as I'm finishing up. Does that happen with women at all? What's the worst mistake you've ever made at work? At my previous apartment, I had made friends with a family of crows, and we developed a nice little bond of mutual respect and trust. Being the weird person that I am, I was terrified to tell them I was leaving, because I don't know how to have that kind of conversation with a wild animal. They're extremely smart, but I highly doubt they would get the gist. Either way, I said nothing, and kinda ghosted them a bit because I felt bad about the whole thing, and I'm bad with feelings. Moving day came, and as my friend and I were packing up the U-Haul, the crows were losing their crap. They were not happy, and they wanted the entire roost in the giant evergreen to know. It felt like they knew exactly what was happening, and they didn't appreciate the zero notice given, in the slightest. I know enough about crows by now to know that the last thing you want to do is tick them off, because that passes along generationally, and your face will be recognized and loathed for decades to come by crows in that area who weren't even born when you left. I didn't feel good about it, to say the least. Flash forward to a little. It was 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and I had just pulled into work. I was walking across the lot towards the showroom when I noticed there was a lot of bird poop on the ground. A lot. I thought maybe it had been there before, and I just hadn't noticed, but it was notable for sure. As I was approaching my desk, one of my managers was walking by with another employee, saying it's effing unreal. I've never seen anything like it in my life. When he passed by me again, I asked if he was talking about the bird crap, and indeed he was. He told me to go walk the lot for a bit, so I walked outside and noticed that the wreckage on the pavement was nothing compared to the carnage that was released onto the cars. I'm not talking a few cars. I'm not talking even 100. Every single car was covered. The used Volvos, the new Volvos, the innocent Volvos just in for service. Not one was spared. It wasn't even like one splatter of poop per car either. I didn't know that this many types of bird poop existed. I didn't even know that they had solid poops until this day. Every car had multiple bombs dropped on it, and it was evident that it was all orchestrated for maximum devastation. Zero doubt that the feast they must have had the night before was of epic and unprecedented proportions. 15 minutes later, we were all in the conference room for our morning Saturday meeting, and it was then I found out the details. Apparently, one of the service technicians was the first to arrive that morning, at around 7. He said that when he pulled in, no less than 200 crows were lined up along the wooden fence at the property line of the dealership. They waited about a minute to make sure they knew someone saw who was responsible for the mess, and then they flew off. My managers were trying to get the footage from the security cameras, but couldn't, because for some reason, it was conveniently cut during the show. That was my first Saturday meeting, and I was still new and quiet, but as soon as they said crows did it, I bit my lip. It was pointed. They seemingly enlisted every crow in the greater Portland area to show their displeasure at my place of work. No other patch of pavement or structure nearby was touched, and the options are aplenty. It took over a week to clean all the cars and have the lot sprayed. In hindsight, the Irish goodbye was a bad idea. I told my fiancée that I didn't want to take care of her children. I was gutted when I returned home and learned that they moved out. I have been with my fiancée Tina for 9 years now. She has 2 sons with her ex. One is 14, and the other is 12. Both are good kids. I've always been there for them with zero issues. Tina has always provided for the kids financially and hardly asked me anything. Money was never an issue. The issue is time. Well, she just gave birth to my baby 8 months ago, a perfect baby girl who is the absolute apple of my eye. I didn't know I could love this much. The problem is that it's grown increasingly apparent that I just want to spend time with my daughter. I'm barely home. I work 6 days a week, and Tina works from home. When I'm home, I just want to hang out with my daughter because I'm barely able to. I work at 5 a.m. and don't get home until 4:30 to 5 p.m. I only get 4-ish hours to hang out a day. I want to scoop my daughter up and just hang out with her. That's it. That's all I want. I'm already missing so much. But Tina's 2 sons, every single day, are asking me to hang out with them as soon as I get home, to play pass with them, to go to the park with them, to go swimming or fishing or whatever else. I keep getting irritated because dividing my time and not spending that time with my daughter is physically paining me. Tina asked me last night what was happening because she said she could no longer ignore that I was acting like I hated her sons. I told her that I didn't hate them at all. I love them a great deal, but I can't ignore the fact that I have zero desire to divide my time between them and our daughter, considering our daughter is growing like a weed, and I'm already missing everything. She looked highly hurt and said that her sons kept asking why I didn't like them anymore, and she asked that I talk to them. I told her I would eventually speak to them, but it would be nice if she could explain to them that I'm trying to be a dad. She said, yeah, well, you seem to be forgetting that you played dad for 9 years before you had a baby, and now you're pushing them away like last week's garbage. She was getting snippy with me and visibly irritated at this point, so I just snapped and said, I don't want to effing take care of your kids right now. She starts crying and walks away. I tried apologizing later, but she wouldn't speak to me. I tried hugging her, but she asked me not to touch her. She slept in the nursery. I went to work this morning. I just got home, and they are gone. Most of their stuff is gone. There's a note on the table that says, I will not jeopardize my older kids' mental health for the sake of your feelings. I will bring our daughter to see you once daily, give you time with her, and then leave again. We can work out a custody agreement when she's no longer breastfed. I wish you the best. I'm gutted. I called my buddy just to vent and cry or whatever. He said, well, isn't this what you wanted? Now you get time with your kid without distractions from kids that aren't yours. I don't know how to feel. I didn't mean I wanted them to leave, and I didn't imply that I didn't love them anymore. She won't speak to me. Said, I will not be answering texts unless they are about our daughter, and has not returned my numerous phone calls to fix this. Am I the a-hole?
Ask Reddit. Women, what are men not ready to hear?
1. Sometimes women are nice to you because they just want to be friends, not because they're in love with you. 2. We never want strange men grabbing or touching us in public, ever. 3. If you feel the need to tell me what a nice guy you are, that's my #1 sign to get as far away as possible from you. 4. Catcalling isn't a compliment. It really scares us because we don't know how well you'll take being rejected. 5. Driving like a maniac in front of me does not impress me. 6. Very few of us actually play hard to get. We're probably just moving on. 7. Take care of your hands and feet. Self-care isn't just for women. 8. You're just as emotional as us, just in the form of anger. 9. If you don't cut off men who treat women poorly, you are part of the problem. 10. A lot of you aren't able to handle the word no, apparently. 11. Self-pity and complaining to us about how girls don't like you is a huge turnoff. If no girls like you, there's probably a good reason. 12. We know it's not all men, but we have to assume it is because we never know which ones of you are part of the bad ones. 13. The nice guy doesn't finish last, you just aren't actually that nice. 14. Not pulling your weight at home is disrespectful to us. Expecting us to take on the majority of household chores and child care responsibilities while you sit back is lazy and entitled. 15. Sometimes we don't just want instant solutions. If we tell you about our problems, learn to empathize with us and listen. 16. We notice when you speak down to us, and we hate it. 17. We do not want that unsolicited D-pic 10 out of 10 times.
I don't know how to co-parent with my child's father because he keeps making mistakes that inconvenience us greatly. Our baby is 11 months. Since 4 to 10 months I, alone, was preparing her baby food and freezing it in advance so that we could feed her with much more ease. Now she's ready for table food and I'm really excited at the advancement, but it's not like that makes it any easier. So I make her certain things ahead of time and freeze them. Like pancakes, French toast, pasta sauce etc. Last week we were going on a weekend trip, so to get ahead of this week, Elle spent an hour making an entire pack of bread into French toast so that all we had to do for breakfast this week is warm up the bread and cut up fruit. Sunday when we came back in town I went to see my grandmother who is really a rare cancer and is almost ready to leave this earth. So when I got home from seeing her I noticed the French toast I made is gone. Confusedly, I ask him where is it and he says he accidentally left it out and had to throw it away. I was so sad because I had just spoke to him 2 hours before about how I need his help with her food such as not wasting it when we can because I have to remake it. He said okay and then 2 hours later threw away a whole week of breakfast. Yesterday he says he will make her breakfast so he did, but he put it in the freezer with the bag wide open so ice crystals are forming all over the food. It's freezer burnt and won't warm up good. Last night he was on dinner duty so I went to the grocery store and got him everything he needed and made the sides while he went to the gym from 6 to 10 p.m. The baby was asleep and bathed by time he came home. I reminded him to make her a lightly seasoned piece of fish and referred him back to the recipe I screenshot and sent him earlier that day. He didn't finish cooking until about midnight and I noticed he never made her fish. So I reminded him and he said he would give her fish from our plate since he didn't use much salt. I said okay, just put it in the fridge. Today after the freezer burnt breakfast I noticed he never put the fish he made her last night in the fridge, so it's been sitting in the microwave because he thinks that's a good place for food storage, despite the constant reminder and request that he refrigerate food immediately, something I've been struggling to get him to do since I became pregnant. So I made him wake up and make her breakfast and I asked him to cut up some fruit to go alongside her French toast. He didn't do it and just gave her the bread. He told me he was getting to it, he just needed to answer an email. His mistakes are starting to make me break down. Today I had enough of the back-to-back morning F-ups from his end and called him stupid and a sorry mother effer. I try to get ahead of my mornings because I'm not a morning person, but he is destroying any kind of order or structure I try to develop. I keep explaining to him how important it is for a baby to have a full balanced meal. He thinks I am not allowing him to make mistakes. I'm starting to hate him because of his incompetence. Is this fixable?
Parents, why is your child a disappointment? Technically my stepdaughter. I never planned or wanted kids, but fell in love with a man who had sole custody of his 9-year-old daughter, and realized pretty immediately that I loved her too. Bio mom is a dangerous narcissist as both husband and kid have scars from wounds she inflicted on them. The mom has made zero attempts to be in my kid's life since the divorce. Over the last 9 years, my husband and I have worked hard to raise an intelligent, thoughtful, caring young adult. We've tried to nurture a healthy home life. Obviously, she and he were both in therapy following the split from her bio mom, and they both seem to thrive. We do not speak negatively about her bio mom. When she makes attempts to reconnect with her bio mom, we are supportive and reassure her when those efforts are rebuffed. Both my husband and I want her to have a life full of positive experiences. We encouraged her to pursue extracurriculars, and she seemed to innately pick up on instruments, dance, technical skills, etc. We rebuilt car engines with her and taught her to dance the Charleston for a school play. We have focused our income and energies on raising an engaged adult. When my husband was laid off, I got a second job, working 80 hours a week, so we could continue to support her extracurriculars while still saving for her college fund and, pay bills. One of her extracurriculars was pageantry. Totally not my thing, but some of her friends had gotten into it and she wanted to try it out. Okay, cool. I don't know if you're aware, but there is literally no way to do a pageant on the cheap. Even with her dad making a couple of her costumes, we had poured over $1,000 into this. She needs one more dress and we were clear, you have to keep it under $500. There is literally no money left after that. She found her perfect dress that exceeded the budget by a few hundred. We said no. She goes to her bio mom who's on husband number 5 and quickly burns through his money. Bio mom buys the dress. Husband and I are actually pretty surprised and relieved. Night of the pageant, one of the things all the contestants do is write up a bio of the people who supported them and helped make them who they are. They get to my kid and begin reading this beautiful piece she's written about her mom, her bio mom, and all the sacrifices she made to raise her and her siblings. She has 2 half-siblings, neither of whom live with the bio mom, and on and on. I was shell-shocked. Most of her friends' parents in the audience are looking at me in confusion because no one's actually met her bio mom before. I'm the one at every game, volunteering on all the booster clubs, and sitting in PTA meetings. A few of them came to talk to me after, saying how that wasn't right, and I put on my smile and just reiterated how we want her to have a positive relationship with her bio mom.
What happened at your school that made you scared to go back? This event actually made me quit school. This happened in the late 90s. I was raised by my grandmother, who was an animal hoarder and had many other unpleasant mental issues. She wouldn't buy me shampoo or anything a young girl needs for her hygiene. I smelled nasty, and as a result of my stench, an appearance, I was targeted by every hole in the school. My only escape was to go to art class. I would work it out with my teachers and slam through all my schoolwork if I was allowed to sit in the art room for the remainder of the class. I do not know who it was who did this to me. It could have been anyone, since in fact, everyone hated my guts. I was waiting for the bus with my only friend at the end of the school day, and I realized I had left an art project at the art class that I just knew one of the bullies would destroy if I didn't take it home. I rushed back to the building the art room was in, hoping to have time to grab it and get back to the bus loading on the other side of the school. The building entrance that would take me to the art room was in an open-air breezeway that led outward to a rear parking lot. No one really used. Back there was where the band and football buses were parked to take the team to away games and such. There were also the dumpsters. As I ran around the corner and started to run into the door to the stairwell that would lead right up to the art room from the back end of the building, someone grabbed me from behind. I didn't know who it was, just that it felt like a strong guy. They wrapped their arms around my neck, squeezing my throat with the inside of their elbow, pressing my head forward with their hand on the back of my head. In my physically weak state, it did not take long for me to black out 100%. When I woke up hours later, I was in the dark with squishy plastic all around me. I could hear small things moving around and it freaked me out. I could feel a metal wall behind me. I banged on it and realized I had been thrown into one of the dumpsters behind the school. I reached up and tried to push the dumpster lid open, but it wouldn't move. It was weighed down with something. I spent the entire night in that stinking box with rats and roaches. I was unable to free myself until the next morning, when light actually shone through the cracks. I shook the lid until I could press a corner of the dumpster flap open. The top had been covered with cinder blocks. To keep me inside, I walked home along back roads and took a shower using 1 bar of hand soap to wash my hair and skin.
I found out my husband is a racist and a cheater, so I'm leaving him. My soon-to-be ex-husband has been acting really irritated lately, which is unusual for him. He got a new phone as a gift from his sister, and although we've always had passwords on our phones, we never really needed to use them on each other's phones before. But because of his strange behavior, I decided to check his old phone while he was at work to see if it could explain why he's been so angry. I managed to figure out the password and found messages between him and a 19-year-old girl. It wasn't a fake profile. They sent each other voice messages, pictures, and had call and video call logs. They first met on a conservative subreddit when the girl was 18. They mostly talked about that topic, but there was also flirting. They had this weird thing where he called her a little girl, and she called him an old man. They even sent each other inappropriate pictures. I initially thought it might be a sugar baby situation, so I checked our bank accounts, but no money had been sent or asked for. It's frustrating because it seems like they genuinely liked each other, even though he told her he was married with kids, and she didn't seem to mind. What caused all the trouble was when she got upset because he used a racial slur towards her. After she sent a photo of herself doing the splits in her room, he sent her an offensive voice message. She blocked him after that, and he started getting even more angry. I've already cried and broken some things over this. He doesn't know that I know about this, but I've already contacted a lawyer for a divorce. I've taken screenshots of the messages and sent them to my phone. He still doesn't know that I know the truth. We're divorced in my mind, but not officially yet, so I have to keep it together for now. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that no one likes her son? I have 3 older siblings, and my oldest sister Abby has a son and I have a daughter. Abby dealt with years of fertility issues and had probably 10 or more miscarriages. Finally, she had her son and of course, he was Abby's miracle rainbow baby and we were so happy for her. But then it leads to Abby spoiling her son and letting him get away with everything because he's a miracle and he's special. Everyone has always bit their tongue when it comes to her son because of that. On Saturday I had my daughter's first birthday party. It was mostly family and a few of my close friends were invited. I invited Abby and her son because everyone else in our family was invited, so I felt bad excluding her. We had different activities for the kids to do. Abby's son didn't like any of them. He was upset none of the presents were for him and he didn't want to eat any of the food we had. He then decided to try and push the cake off the table because apparently he was mad the cake wasn't his. I got super upset at Abby for allowing her son to act that way. She went on to say her son is special. I said her son is only special to her, which is understandable. But to everyone else, he's a spoiled brat which shouldn't be overlooked because he was your special miracle baby. Abby called me a bitch and left crying. A few family members have since called me an a-hole because I've never dealt with a miscarriage, so I don't understand how painful it was for Abby to deal with years of that before her son. It's not that I don't realize her son is special to her, but it doesn't give the excuse for Abby to allow him to act like a spoiled brat.
I'm a confrontational person but was left speechless. First time poster, extreme lurker. Been working at a restaurant/bar for a little over a year. Pretty quickly gaining regulars and have really enjoyed 90% of the clientele. To make a long story short, one guy has become quite the regular, coming in 2 if not 3 times a week. Orders the cheapest beer and sits at the bar for what seems like my whole shift and never drinks much at all. He is nice, has never made off-putting comments, although pretty opinionated with any changes to do within the restaurant, and, for lack of better words, very cheap. For the time I put in chatting with him, providing much attentiveness, and he's seen all of us in the weeds on some of our busiest nights, always a 10% tip if that. Tonight he decided to ask me if I wear makeup, to which I responded not much and just enough to make me feel good. And he responded that if I were to get gussied up and show up with my hair done etc., he would maybe tip me extra. I was floored, as he has been a regular for a while and I've never had an interaction with him as such. He then continued to ask if I had any pictures of myself all dressed up, which, need I say more? I'm a pretty confrontational gal, but this job has been the first that has left me pretty speechless most times. And as someone putting myself through school, I also don't like to be too rude back to a-holes 80% of the time due to risking the dollar, but I'm sure I'll see him tomorrow and not sure if I should confront him on this. Thoughts or advice? I lost a costume contest to a dog and I became the Hulk. I am genuinely losing my mind here. So I love Halloween. I love making costumes and putting a lot of effort into it. My friend hosted a big Halloween party at her place and said there would be a costume contest for who had the best Halloween costume under $50. Third and second place would win $25, and the first would win $50. It was not a huge money prize, but enough to offset the price of the costume, and to me, it was more about the fun of the game. I wanted to win, so I pulled out all the stops and went as Zorro from One Piece and only had to buy $40 worth of material. When I got to the party, I saw other costumes, and there were some fierce competitors, but I think I had the best costume. Maybe it was too obscure for people who don't know anything about anime, and that might not go well, but it was a good costume. When the winners were announced, I got second. This bummed me out kinda, but hey, I still did well, and again, if I had gone with something more ubiquitous, maybe people would have got it. However, the issue arose when they announced first place. The first place was a dog dressed like a pirate in one of those shitty Party City pirate costumes. So if I had lost to another person, I wouldn't have cared. But I had a few drinks in me, and my inhibitions were lowered, and it was a effing dog. So I out loud asked the host, "Really? The dog won?" And she said yes and was gushing about how cute he looked. I noted that it was a dog, and it didn't even have a say in what was going on. I told her that this didn't seem exactly fair. She told me to lighten up and that it was supposed to be fun. I told her that it was ridiculous she was about to give the $50 prize to the owner for spending $20 on a cheap Walmart dog costume when whoever was in third place actually made our costumes. She got mad that I called her ridiculous, and things kinda escalated into a full-blown argument that required my friend to break us up. I was then kicked out of the party for embarrassing the host. So I don't think I'm the asshole because, obviously, that's not fair. If it was a dog costume contest, but having a bunch of people compete and lose to someone's inbred bulldog is so effing unfair. I think I was justified in saying what I said. People there said I should have just taken the 25 and called it a day.
What is one of the biggest unsolved mysteries to this day? What did Brandon Swanson see? Kid goes to a party but leaves early, gets lost, phones parents to get him. They go to where he said he was, but didn't find him. Phones them again to say he can see a nearby town. He suddenly screams, "Oh crap," and the call hangs up. He was identified later that he was 20 miles from where he said he was. His body or phone were never found. It's thought he drowned in a river, but no one can prove it. What happened to Lars Minink? German man goes on a holiday and is attacked by local football hooligans for liking the rival team, which caused his eardrum to rupture. He later phones his mother to say that he thinks he's being followed and to cancel his cards. Unable to fly home when he meant to due to his injury, He is seen on CCTV entering the airport where he drops his luggage, turns around, and bolts outside, runs across the parking lot into a nearby forest, and is never seen again. Where did Brian Schaefer go? Guys seen on CCTV going into a bar, but is never seen leaving. There was only one entrance which was covered by cameras, and none of them captured him leaving. He is presumed dead or missing. No body was ever found.
What is the nicest thing you've ever done that no one knows about? I changed a little homeless girl's life forever. I was day tripping to Vancouver from Seattle and stopped in for lunch at a little cafe. From my window I saw a young teenage girl out in the cold. She was squatting down in a closed-up business doorway, holding a small bundle in her arms. She was panhandling, but people were mostly walking by ignoring her. The poor girl just looked broken. I finished up my meal and went outside, went through my wallet and thought I'd give her $5 for some food. I got up to her and she was sobbing. She looked like she was 14 or 15 years old in that bundle in her arms. It was a baby wrapped up. I felt like I just got punched in the chest. She looked up, putting on a game face, and asked for any change. I asked her if she'd like some lunch. Right next door was a small grocery store, so I got a can of formula for the baby, who was very young, maybe only 3 months old. I took her back to the cafe I'd just eaten at. She was very thankful, got a burger and just inhaled it. Next, I got her some pie and ice cream. She opened up and we talked. She was 15, got pregnant, parents were angry and she was fighting with them. She ran away. She'd been gone almost 1 full year. I asked her if she'd like to go home and she got silent. I coaxed her, and eventually she told me her parents wouldn't want her back. I coaxed further, and she admitted to stealing $5,000 in cash from her dad. We're 5 minutes out, and he parks another air biscuit. Screw you. I contemplated for a little while. When I make the decision, I come to the conclusion that you must fire with fire. Or at least fart with fart. It's perfectly executed. A silent release of a full day of pressure. Every fart has been banked since 9 a.m., and I'm cashing them all in with interest. It's a silent rush of hot air, compressed into 10 seconds of pure release. I'm almost surprised you don't hear my rusty knothole slam shut when it finally ends. Mission accomplished. The perfect undercover fart. I know what you're thinking. How did this go wrong? Did you gamble and lose? Did it let out a loud, incriminating trumpet? Nope. It all went according to plan. For a moment, I was proud of myself. Then the smell hits. I have freaking outdone myself. It's a devastating riposte to what has come before. It hits all the usual notes and adds a hint of burning rubber for effect. It's a spectacular crescendo of wrongful aromas. I can recognize every awful thing I've eaten all day in the mix. It's a fart so carefully matured it could have come with tasting notes, and they would have been 1 word in length. Don't. Now let me tell you how this was a mess up. The electric window slowly slides down next to me, and the cold air hits my face. The cabbie turns to me, with actual tears in his eyes, and says 2 things to me. I am so sorry. What for? I ask innocently. That fart, he replies, eyes wide open, as if it should be obvious. I mean, geez, everybody farts, we're only human. But that. I'm just so sorry. He leaves the windows down all the way into the airport, and gives me a discount on the fare. All the red-eye way home, all I can think is I stink so bad, I've made a cabbie apologize. My mom battled cancer for 18 years to see me graduate school. My 21F mom, 60, has been fighting cancer to see me graduate, and I only learned the whole truth yesterday. For some background story, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer in 2005. Ever since I could remember, I would always go with her to hospitals, see her get many treatments, and always see the look of disappointment on her face when nothing ever worked. The more I grew up, the more odd I found her situation to be. No one with breast cancer went through what she did. 5 months ago her condition became worse than it ever was, and 3 days ago her body completely crashed. She is now sleeping in the hospital until she goes forever. She was in so much pain, and it was decided that it's best to give her medications that will ease the pain, and just let her sleep. Now here comes what I learned yesterday. Apparently before we took her to hospital, while I was in my room, she told my uncle to explain everything to me. This is what he told me while driving me to the hospital. When my mom was diagnosed in 2005, her cancer was spread to her bones, and they gave her 5 years to live. She told my uncle that day, I don't care what we just heard, I'm going to see my daughter graduate. This broke me on the spot. It made many things make more sense, and I finally understood why she never explained properly after I asked so many times. He also told me that before going to the hospital, she told him, do you remember what I told you then? For me that's it, I don't need to continue anymore. She battled so hard her whole life just to see me graduate, just to see that I will be okay, and she did. I am broken. I learned the truth too late, and now she couldn't even hear me say how much I love her. I've never met or heard about someone more incredible than her, and I am so proud to have such a strong, wonderful mother. I just wanted to share her story. Even in hospitals here they use her as a prime example of how strong a person can be if they have a strong mind. I don't even know how to say goodbye to someone who gave everything just for me. She just looks like she's in a deep sleep, and that she will wake up any moment now. But I know I am never going to hear her voice again. Thank you for reading, and I love you so much, Mom. What is the most inappropriate school prank you have pulled? I came up with the genius idea for a prank as a senior. It was to create a mandatory PP inspection that was going to be run by someone with the name of Mike Roch and had it labeled as a graduation requirement. I cobbled up the document on my school Chromebook, working on and off on it for the next couple of weeks. Adding a tweak here, editing a date here, changing the wording there, forgetting it here and there. Eventually I found my time to strike and I was elated that some of my friends found it humorous and encouraged this prank to be done. Now the setup. I've been in the school theater club for about 3 years now. I've familiarized myself with the way it works and the way rehearsals usually work out. I found my opportunity to strike, the 8 p.m. rehearsal days. I left for home, bringing a roll of scotch tape and the magnum opus that I created on my school Chromebook. I waited until rehearsals started and conjured my plan while I was tuning my guitars. I would wait until the 5-minute break before I strike on the unsuspecting school. So I did just that. A couple hours passed after the final bell of the day rang and I conveniently had to take a bathroom break. Additionally, it was extremely convenient that the baseball team had just left the bathroom in question, which gave me the impression that I would have something to fall back on if my genius plan did not go according. I stood in front of the door, the restroom, unsuspecting on how I was about to defile it, and so I struck. Adrenaline pumped through my veins as I dug through my book bag, pulling out my folder and pulling out the roll of scotch tape and tainting the stalls with my product. After 1 short minute, my prank was complete. I walked out of the bathroom pretending to be oblivious to what had just transpired, and I kept it that way. The next day, I woke up to dozens of reposts of the supposed mandatory PP inspections that were supposed to happen at school the following day. It spread quickly among grade levels, the post being shared over and over again on different profiles, being exposed to different eyes each time. It got to a point where the school was alerted and then became a taboo topic to speak about. Any mention from that day about the PP inspection was met with scolding and threats of detention. Seniors and underclassmen were called down to the office by the number, only to be met with interrogating about what had transpired. Here's where I messed up. Not only did I forget about the camera that's in the hallway in front of the bathroom, but the fact it was only the theater club and baseball team in the school, which narrowed the suspects down quite significantly. Did I also mention the day of the inspection was the day of the theater production? Nope. I did not. This amalgamation of not only's created quite the interesting scenario for the following day. I had slept in on the day of the show. My plan to show up during my last period to show up before we began to ready the equipment and leave enough time to touch up any areas that might be work. I woke up to various missed calls by one of my band members, telling me that I messed up and that I was in a lot of crap. One thing came to mind, the PP inspection. My bandmate had told me that I was at risk of getting kicked out of the show or even having the show cancelled altogether and having my graduation revoked if measures were to be taken that drastically. He told me that the principal required me at school that instant and threatened me with various disciplinary measures. I rushed to school, frantically getting out of the house and sprinting down the sidewalk trying to get to school as quickly as possible. When I finally got to the school, I was greeted by the ever-so-friendly ring doorbell summoning me to the office that instant. I timidly entered, trying my best to play stupid. I was being scolded for missing most of the school day. My moment of relief was quickly cut short by the piercing yell of my name down the office. My principal looked at me with a fiery scowl, eyeing me down across the room like a lion readying for its next prey. She told me to go on with my day and that we were going to have a pleasant chat after. My body was filled with terror the remaining 3 periods. I trudged through the hallways with ice in my veins, terrified of the impending scolding later. Fast forward to the end of the school day, I was walking down the hallway when I heard my name being called on the intercom. My body froze, my heart skipped a beat, and my mind went numb for an instant. I had felt the cold hand of death on my very body that instant. Knowing very well this was self-inflicted, I had no escape as my legs walked to the office, my body wanting to run the opposite direction. What justification did I have for this, you may ask? If you know it was going to cause this much of a turmoil, what could possibly be the justification? It's funny. I walked with a pale face down to the office and was called down into the principal's personal office. The door slammed behind me and I stood before my principal, my stomach in my throat. She pulled out one of the inspection papers and slid it on the desk across to me. Do you recognize this? She began to read the first sentence and I could see the stern look on her face breaking slowly. She began to have a change of heart and wanted me to take accountability of it and realize that it was indeed a mess up. I was allowed to participate in the show as the lead guitarist, and I also am able to let this slide with little to no consequence, with the only notable punishment not being able to participate in a school barbecue the following week, which wasn't exactly world-ending to me, but all is well.
Lawyers have read it. What's the most ridiculous argument you've heard in court? Oh geez, where do I start? I mean, I could tell plenty of these about my own clients, but I like this one. A lady has an injury comp case. It's for her upper back and of course complex regional pain syndrome. She decides she needs the insurance company to pay for a special mattress for her, like a $6,000 memory foam, with heat and massage and 1,000 other features. And not just a twin, she needs a California king because of course her layabout unemployed boyfriend needs to sleep there too. We spend months litigating this damn thing. Finally, she buys it herself and my client agrees to give her $1,500 just to be done with it. The judge takes myself and opposing counsel aside and says he's gonna scream at us if we ever say the word mattress in his court again after wasting all this time. It was that ridiculous. Not 3 months go by and the case comes on for another hearing. After exhausting all the chiropractic care allowed under the law, her doctor was seeking a variance to get some additional chiropractic. We get to court and I'm arguing it should be denied, etc. Judge turns to her and says, "Ma'am, why do you feel you need more chiropractic care?" She pauses for a minute then says, "I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping on my mattress. I think I saw smoke coming out of his ears."
The child's mother told me that my daughter ruined her party. I have a daughter and her name is Aurora. And no, it had nothing to do with the princess from Sleeping Beauty. Ironically, My daughter realized that she shared names with a Disney character, Princess Aurora, who has been her favorite. Our family went to Disney World, and while there, we bought my daughter a Princess Aurora costume. She adores it, and wears it whenever she has the chance. 2 weeks ago, one of Aurora's friends from school threw a princess-themed birthday party. She encouraged her friends to wear costumes. My daughter wanted to go as her favorite character, which didn't surprise me at all. When we got to the party, the birthday girl came to greet my daughter, and she was also dressed as Princess Aurora. I didn't know what her costume was going to be prior to the party. I got worried for a second, but the birthday girl was actually really excited. She said that they looked like twins. It was adorable. They ran off to play and I forgot about the costumes for a while. About 30 minutes into the party, I was at a table with some of the other moms when the birthday girl's mother came up to me. She asked if I had brought any spare clothes for Aurora. I said yes, I always bring an extra shirt and shorts for her. She then asked me to change my daughter into spare clothes and out of her costume. The mother explained that she'd hired a photographer to walk around taking pictures of the kids, and was also planning on getting a group photo near the end of the party. She didn't want anyone wearing the same costume as her daughter in these pictures. She also thought her daughter might get jealous, since my kid gets to share her name with her favorite princess. Now, if the birthday girl was the one who had a problem, I might have considered changing Aurora into her spare clothes. But no, she was genuinely excited they were dressed the same. It also didn't feel fair to force my daughter to be the only one without a costume in a party full of children in princess dresses. I said no and explained my reasoning to the girl's mom. She insisted for a few minutes, but I held my ground. Some of the other moms started to back me up, and she eventually got up and left. When I went to pick up my kids earlier this week, I ran into her friend's mom. She accused me of ruining her daughter's party by allowing Aurora to wear the same costume as her. She told me she doesn't think she'll ever be able to look at the pictures without being disgusted by my behavior. I thought she was exaggerating, but I'm starting to doubt myself. Our conflict has found its way to the mom group chat we're both in, and opinions over there are divided. Some think having two girls wear the same costume is no big deal, others think I should have changed my daughter's clothes. I destroyed my entire family for $99.99. I'm my mom and uncle's child, my uncle's my dad. With the recent craze of DNA testing, my family decided to try it out too. We got our results back on my birthday, and I went into the DNA relatives section to check out my matches. At the top, it listed my dad as only sharing 29.2% DNA with me and is predicted to be a half-brother, which is impossible. This didn't make sense to me since we also shared a paternal haplogroup, and we just looked so alike, so he was definitely my father. My cousin also had taken the test a while back, and she shared 24.6% with me, also predicted to be my half-sibling. We're supposed to share around 12% as first cousins. I couldn't think of a genetic relationship that would explain what I was seeing. I called the testing place, and they said the shared percentages are extremely accurate and highly unlikely to be false. The only realistic explanation for what I was seeing was that my uncle, my cousin's father, and my dad's brother, is my father. Reality hit me in the face like a flying bag of bricks. All the dots lined up, and I felt a sense of loss. I sat in my room for an hour just in shock, and then I had a feeling of anger come over me. I need answers. Without even thinking, I rushed out of my room and confronted my mother downstairs. My mom is often away on business trips. She had no idea we had done one of these tests since she just got back from a trip. My mother and I never had a traditional relationship. She was always focused on her work, and my dad ended up raising me. I didn't even sugarcoat it. I asked her if she cheated on dad with Uncle David. I have never seen the color drain from someone's face so quickly. She looked dumbfounded and then mumbled, "What kind of question is this?" Of course not. I told her everything, the test, percentages, DNA matches, all of it. Shit hit the fan. My mom fell to the ground crying, begging me not to tell dad. I left her there and went back into my room. I called my cousin, who I guess is my half-sister, and told her everything. She ended the call screaming at her dad, Uncle David. My dad then came home and stumbled into my room, asking what's wrong with mom. I told him everything too. He didn't say anything and left the room. For the next few hours, I heard my entire family fall apart outside my door. My parents got into a heated argument, and my grandparents rushed over to see what was going on. My aunt and Uncle David showed up shortly later, and Dad and David get into a big fight. Utter chaos, all on the day of my birthday. If I had spent my fucking birthday money on something else, none of this would have happened. I'm too scared to go outside. Fuck my life. My psycho fiancé faked a violent miscarriage to see if I actually wanted kids. So I canceled our wedding and everyone is accusing me of cheating. I have been dating my fiancée Vivian for 5 years and we found out she was pregnant shortly after I proposed. We were both ecstatic about it, even though it wasn't planned. I love Vivian but she has a tendency to take things too far with her jokes. Ever since we started dating, she has been convinced that pranks are the best way to surprise someone. I will never forget the joke she made on our 3-year anniversary. She turned off her phone, disappeared for 3 hours, and had her doctor best friend call me telling me there's been an accident. I nearly passed out from fear. When I got to the hospital, she was sitting in the waiting room with a huge grin on her face. I got a lot of crap that day for being a sore loser. 4 days ago, I got off work so I immediately headed home to our apartment. I saw her best friend, Carly, sitting on the couch looking upset, which is unlike her, so I asked if everything was okay and where Vivian was. Carly told me that she was in our main bathroom, so I headed over to it and noticed that Carly was following me, which I think was a little strange but brushed off. I knocked on the door and asked if I could come in, which Vivian said yes to, so I opened the door and saw my fiancée standing over the toilet with tears in her eyes when she looked at me. I immediately asked her what was wrong and Vivian sniffled and told me that she miscarried, gesturing for me to look inside the toilet. I looked inside and the water was reddish, and there was a lump what looked like to be a fetus with a stray piece of red tissue sorta covering it. I averted my eyes after I saw it, and then started crying. I was genuinely sobbing, which I haven't done since Vivian revealed that she was pregnant, but those were tears of joy. I grabbed my fiancée and hugged her tight, while crying into her shoulder. Eventually, I looked up and saw in the bathroom mirror that Carly was standing in doorway with her phone out like she was recording something or taking pictures. I let go of Vivian and asked Carly what the hell she was doing. Carly stammered and was going, while looking for an excuse. Eventually my fiancée fessed up and admitted that she didn't actually have a miscarriage and that it was a test to see how much I actually cared about the baby. I essentially short-circuited, unable to comprehend how the hell Vivian and Carly, despite us not being as close, could do something so outlandishly cruel to me. I snapped out of it when Vivian attempted to touch my cheek, and pushed her hands away. I didn't want to be near her or have her touch me at that moment. Carly and Vivian tried to stop me from leaving the bathroom, but I pushed past them so I could go to our bedroom. I haphazardly packed some clothes into an old bag and headed straight for the door after grabbing my keys. Vivian caught up with me at the door and tried to plead with me to stay and talk about what happened, but I told needed time away from her to process what happened. She didn't push for me to stay after that, but seemed disappointed about it. I ended up staying with a buddy of mine, Josh, who told me that I could stay as long as I wanted once I told him what happened and commented how that was up for Vivian to do to me. I'll admit I was being childish and dodged Vivian's texts and calls except for let her know that I was safe over the next 2 days. Once I felt stable enough, I invited Vivian to talk. I won't get into everything we talked about, but the reason why Vivian decided to test me was that she was afraid that I didn't actually want the baby, and was caring for them because I had to in order to not be seen as a deadbeat. I said that I understood her fears, but I legitimately wanted to be a father to our baby. But I couldn't stay with someone who would traumatize me like that. She flipped out on me and told me I couldn't leave her alone with our baby. I told her I wouldn't leave the baby, but I would be leaving her. Vivian started sobbing, but I just told her to get out. Vivian said, okay, and left my friend's apartment. I honestly assumed that was that, and I was going to go home soon after that. Boy, was I wrong. An hour after Vivian left, I got messages from Carly and her parents harassing me about forcing Vivian to have a baby out of wedlock. It got so intense that I eventually blocked her. She was calling me a man wh and that I was an adulterer, or whatever that meant. I never even looked at another woman. They started texting me from random numbers and sending me edited pictures of me kissing random women. I genuinely am losing my mind. Did I do anything wrong? The day I saved a wedding from an evil old hag. By pouring a bit of red wine all over a very white dress. A good friend of mine from university was getting married. They had been a couple for 6 years. She had been to all manner of family functions and always came back with a strange story about how she thinks her mother-in-law secretly hates her. But she, being a very quiet and sweet person, pushed those thoughts aside. A few friends and I were asked to be at the wedding. Friend has a huge family and so this was not going to be a small affair. Neither of them is particularly religious, but a friend said it would be nice to be married under a huppah. Think an arbor but 4 poles and covered with a white cloth and lots of flowers. Husband said he could care less, and told her to go and rent one for the wedding. I was at the bridal shower when mother-in-law found out the pretty canopy was actually a huppah. She almost lost her crap in front of a bunch of people, but managed to compose herself and laugh angrily that if the Jews were being represented, so would the Catholics. In my head I heard a record screech, guys. They aren't Catholic. So after much fighting, a lot of screaming, crying, threatening to pull money, which is funny because she contributed nothing, mother-in-law lost. The boot was firmly placed, and nothing was moving it. Huppah yes, Catholic priest no. Things got stupid quiet. My friend texts me the night before the wedding that she has a bad feeling. I tell her it's probably just nerves, she is getting married and this is a big deal. Oh, how wrong I was. We all show up, get our hair and makeup done. Slip into our bridesmaid dresses and hang out waiting for the bride to be finished with her hair. She makes a comment saying she hadn't seen mother-in-law all day and that she skipped her hair and makeup appointment. We all sighed at each other, took a few sips of wine and hoped the eerie feeling would go away. 30 minutes later, as we are helping the bride into her dress, guess who shows up? If you guessed mother-in-law, you win a cookie. Flushed from coming up the stairs, she is not a light woman, in full hair and makeup, and a white dress. Not ivory, not cream, full snow effing white. The dress was clearly a wedding dress, it was even from David's bridal, which she would later shout at me. Floor-length satin with a sweetheart beaded top, a bit of a train and off-white lace on the bottom. The dress was even tailored to her. The bride burst into tears and aunts and friends ushered mother-in-law out. We did our best to console the bride, touched up her makeup, and I made her a promise that the dress would never be seen in a photo. She looked me dead in the eye and nodded. The game was on. The venue only supplied white wine and champagne for the wedding party. But I grabbed my purse and ran down into the reception area and managed to flag an attendant by the bar and bribe him with a cool $20 to give me a bottle of red early. I cracked the baby open, filled a solo cup to the brim with it and stalked outside. After a few swigs from the bottle for courage, I went over to where everyone was getting ready to take photos. With one last hard stare at my friend, I got her nod of approval. I pulled out my phone, held it in front of my face like I was reading a text and walked straight into mother-in-law. I poured the entire cup of red wine down the front of her dress, jumped back and gasped. The look on her face was murderous. She screamed, yelled, threatened, and promised she would sue me. People had to hold her back because she wanted to fight me. Eventually she switched from screaming to sobbing and sank to the ground and threw a tantrum on the floor. Everyone moved back and just let her go at it and walked away to go take photos. It was surreal, as if everyone just hit their limit and noped out from around her. The 12-year-old flower girl whipped out her phone and snapped a few photos, much to our amusement. Mother-in-law went home and changed, only 20 minutes from venue, into a nice, dark green, too small and low-cut dress. Because of this she missed all of the photos. Wedding was beautiful. I got death glares from everyone. She told that I attacked her with wine. No damns were given as I drank and danced with friends. Bride thanked me in secret and 3 months later took me to the spa for a day of pampering. But I am officially that ISIS B word to mother-in-law, and I'll take it with pride.
Guys, what made you realize, this girl is definitely not into me? I once went on a date with this girl, bought her dinner. Went downstairs to the bar nightclub for a drink afterwards. She ran into some girlfriends and just went over to their table, sat down and started chatting and drinking. I sat alone for about 20 minutes, then just left without saying anything. Never heard from her again. Had a dinner together, and the entirety of her contributions to the conversation were repetitions of "yep, that's cool," and such. Even when I tried to ask her questions and engage her in the conversation, she just had nothing to add or to say. Was pretty clear it wasn't sparking. Asked a girl if she wanted to grab lunch together sometime. She said she was busy that day, which was interesting as I never specified a day. What did your child's teacher say that made your jaw drop? Yeah. I cried over this situation. My son, who is high-functioning Asperger's, was in 6th grade. The school was trying to make money by having students sell items from a catalog. They had prizes for the students who sold the most items. One of the prizes was a 20-speed very nice bicycle. My son was in love with the bike. He came home blabbering to me a mile a minute about how he was going to win that bike. He had it all planned out and he was so confident he could get enough sales to win that bike. He had a straight path and there was nothing I could say to try and let him down easy in case he didn't win. I live in Minnesota and this fundraiser was in the winter and the cold air can freeze a person quickly. He walked everywhere in an 80,000 population area. He went if it was cold, snowing or any other weather. He even visited every house in another town that we were preparing to move to in the spring. The catalog had some cute things in it, so I put in a $30 order. I was pretty hopeful he could win also. He had over $1,000 worth of orders. I was waiting to see how he did. I called the school a few times and got evasive answers. Finally they told me he won a pizza party for his classroom. Finally the day came when we had to bag up all his orders and deliver them. Going through the orders, my $30 order was missing. All of it. I complained to the committee that my order was missing. They offered to give me my money back, which I accepted. That was a mistake. The school sent out a newsletter saying such and such had won the bike with $20 less than the items my son had sold. It was plain to see that the committee didn't want my son to win. The $30 worth of stuff I ordered, that was deleted intentionally, made my son's order lower than the rich kid that won. They apparently used the excuse that I had asked for a refund, and I had no proof otherwise. I was livid. I went to the teacher showing them how my order had been deleted and my son's order was indeed larger than the boy that won. She said there was nothing that she could do about it. I cried. How does a parent explain to someone who worked so hard going out every evening to sell the stuff? I had never been able to afford a new bike for him. How do I explain to him that the school wouldn't do anything about the problem? He knew they cheated him. He is a genius with numbers. I felt so betrayed. How could a school cheat a student? My son was angry about it for a long time. He never sold another thing for those fundraisers and I never bought anything again from schools. Of course I did have the last laugh. My son went to college and got a degree in IT, some software engineering branch. He graduated with honors. He has a very good job managing many people. You know what? He is a sensitive person and would never lie to or cheat anyone. I am still sad thinking about how a school can lie and smash a kid's dreams.
How did your schizophrenia start? I started smoking grass heavily when I was 16 or 17 and started to have mushrooms as well. Eventually I thought that an angel named Satan visited me. I basically hallucinated him inside of my head and found him charismatic, charming and awesome. I developed a crush on him and would go to town on myself thinking of Satan. I was having conversations with who I thought was Satan, but I didn't think he was evil. I thought he was a pretty angel. I made my own Ouija board to try and communicate with Satan and other beings. I was told through the board that I was the world's chosen Messiah. I would just use my point finger and it would move on its own. I believed every bit of it and thought I was Satan's chosen Messiah and that the world was going to come to an end. I told a bunch of people this and I even got a girlfriend while I was claiming to be Satan. She was just as crazy as me and in bed we would often roleplay with some satanic twists. I thought I had superpowers, related to energy and could heal diseases and perform miracles. When I eventually told my parents of my revelation, they called a local priest on me, to basically talk to me and exorcise me. I cursed him in the name of Satan and he left, very scared. I eventually was taken to a mental hospital by my parents and then, I lied to all of the mental hospital people. I told them that I was just a normal guy and my parents were uptight Christians. Truth is, I was insane. I lied to everyone at the mental hospital and they let me out 3 days later. At this point I made peace with my parents and I stopped sharing my delusional thoughts. Eventually the delusions disappeared on their own. Some things I did under delusions. Stayed awake for days doing blow and played the Ouija board. The Ouija board said that I would win the lottery, no doubt. So I convinced my friend at the time to play lottery tickets with me. I remember how disappointed we were when all we won was like enough to buy a pack of cigarettes after playing all different types of lotto. I tried to summon demons using a ram's horn and tried to make creepy puppets. It weirded me out, so I threw the skull into the woods somewhere at a homeless camp. I convinced at least 3 other people of my delusions. I basically made my own delusional cult at the age of 19. I then convinced a girl that I met online that I was the Messiah, and we had a horrible relationship for 1 year. I thought that muffins were communicating messages to me secretly because I was the Messiah. I deciphered the messages based on the muffin size, its dryness, or what type of muffin it was. I laid on hands a mentally disabled guy at my workplace and thought I healed him of his sins. He thanked me. What's the worst rule your parents made you follow? I told my stepdaughter to stop using period products in the bathroom she shares with my teenage sons. I have been living with my new wife and stepdaughter for about 6 months now. She's 19, almost 20, and I have 3 sons aged 18, 16 and 15. She's a really good kid and she's a good influence on my sons. I really enjoy having her around. My wife and her daughter moved into my house and sold theirs. My stepdaughter's father isn't present in her life, nor is my son's mother. All 4 children share a bathroom. My sons have never lived for a long period of time with a woman, nor have any of them had long-term girlfriends. They had short visitation periods when they were younger, but never longer than an hour, so living with 2 women has been unusual for them. My eldest son, 18, came to me last week and told me that his stepsister disposes of her used sanitary products in the trash can they share, but doesn't use toilet roll or sandwich bags to disguise what they are, and it makes him uncomfortable, which I think is reasonable. My sons are teenage boys and don't want to see their stepsister's period products on full display. A few nights ago I went into the kitchen to grab a snack and she was there doing some work for university. My wife had mentioned that she knew she was on her period, so I took it as an opportunity to have a word with her. I told her my sons were uncomfortable and asked her if she'd mind putting her used products in diaper bags or flushing them down the toilet. She laughed and told me it was rich coming from a man who sheds like a gorilla and has produced 3 skid-marking sons, which I thought was just an unnecessary attack. I've been nothing but nice to the girl and it's hardly a comparison. My sons shouldn't be subjected to her unhygienic products if it makes them uncomfortable. She went on to lecture me about how tampons can't be flushed and that it's bad for the environment if she uses diaper bags for everyone, which I think is just an excuse. I called her a scruff and told her that this was my house and that what I say goes. I later asked my wife if she could have a word with her and she told me I was being ridiculous and that her daughter has had her period for 10 years and knows what she's doing. When I told her it was making my sons uncomfortable, she said my sons needed to get a grip and turned over and went to sleep. This is a genuine issue to me and she didn't care enough to have a discussion about it. I asked my stepdaughter again in the morning and she did the same as her mother, completely dismissed it. Both of them have told me to stop being so silly, but I don't see how I'm being unreasonable when it makes my sons uncomfortable.
She wanted to speak to my manager, so I called the person who manages my life. This happened yesterday. I was in Canadian Tire. For all of you non-Canadians, it's like a mix between a Walmart, a Home Depot, a Bass Pro Shops, and an auto shop. I was wearing jeans and an old red polo shirt. The employees there wear black pants and a red polo with a triangle and maple leaf logo on the chest. I was getting wipers for my car because mine aren't clearing the rain off my window anymore. It's a riveting story. They have this touchscreen thing there where you select the vehicle and it tells you the specific sizes you need for each wiper and brand. I was fiddling with the screen and going through the different sizes and makes of wipers and reading reviews on each one. I research everything before I buy it. Drives my wife crazy. I hear someone behind me say, "Excuse me." I think she wants to use the screen to figure out what wiper to buy, so I move to the section that has the wiper brand I'm interested in and start looking for the size I need. My assumption was wrong. She followed me to where I was now poking through the very badly stocked wipers. From now on I'll be me, and she'll be Dushake Anu, which I'll shorten to DC. DC, why did you walk away from me? That's very rude. I didn't even know she was talking to me at this point. So I kept looking at wipers. DC, this is unbelievable. I'm talking to you. I finally click in that I'm the one she's talking to. So I stupidly turn to face her while gripping a 28-inch wiper like a toddler holds a crayon. Me, you talking to me? DC, yeah you. I need to know what size wiper to get for my Mercedes. Me, that's what the screen is for, I said as I gesture towards it with the wiper in my hand and go back to searching for the second elusive 28-incher. DC, you are terrible at your job, this isn't proper customer service, she said all huffy. Me, I don't work here. I'm gonna go back to this now. DC, I want to speak to your manager right now. This isn't how you treat customers. Ignoring me and refusing to help me, it's disgraceful. At this point she kind of stomps off, but only a few aisles away, and the aisles in the automotive department aren't full height ones, they are like chest height so you can see right across the whole department. She just does a few laps of the aisles around where I am. She's looking all over the place for a manager but not going far, I think so she doesn't lose sight of me. Me, still don't work here. So going to be hard to find that manager. And you're not listening to me. Okay, I say to her and trail off as she's obviously not caring at all. I go back to my wipers. While she's on her walk I find my wiper and start to head towards the checkouts. She chases me down and gets in front of me, trying to stop my escape before a manager gets there. DC, no. You're not allowed to leave until I speak to your manager about you. I've had enough of this buffoon. I pull out my phone and call my manager. I'm self-employed, so I call the one person in my life who could reasonably be called my manager. The wife, henceforth referred to as boss. Me, I'll call her for you, you aren't going to be able to find her here. I put it on speakerphone so the crazy lady can hear. As the phone rings, she's giving me this superior smirk like I'm about to get my butt chewed out. Me, hey, how's the trip going? She's on a business trip, boss, great, been having some excellent meetings with the L3s, VP level people. What's up? Me, picking up some wipers. Boss, and you're so jazzed about them that you needed to call me in the middle of the day? DC is getting really frustrated at this point. I'm obviously not getting to the me getting fired fast enough for her. Me, nope, got a lady here at Canadian Tire who wants to talk to my manager. I kind of thought you're the closest thing to that. Want to talk to her? Boss, what the hell, lapk? Am I on speakerphone? Me, oh. Yeah, the crazy lady can hear you. How else is she supposed to talk to my manager? Say hi to the crazy lady. DC is finally starting to realize that I don't have a store logo on my shirt, and that maybe I'm not an employee. Boss, you're such a jackass. I'm sorry, ma'am, my husband is an idiot. But he doesn't work there. I start to laugh at this point. Me, it's cool, hun, she seems kind of slow or something. She probably doesn't realize I'm laughing at her. I say through my laughter while DC makes some kind of appalled noise from the back of her throat and stalks off. I manage to get my wipers and leave the store after that without any further incident. My wife thinks I was mean to her. I say I was fighting stupidity with dumbassery.
Final, I'm stuck in a loveless relationship because I cheated on my wife. Good news, my girlfriend and I have broken up. She has gone back to her home country and left my son with me. Refused to sign any formal custody agreement, so I'm hoping she stays there and doesn't bother us again. I'm pretty sure if she comes back and demands time with him, I have a good case for maintaining custody. She's not even interested in FaceTiming with him, so he remembers her. I feel bad that my son will deal with a crappy/absent mother, but I hope I can get him into therapy as he grows. Bad news, I've tried my best to insist on visitation with my daughters and that has fallen through. They absolutely refuse to see me. They wrote me a letter together that says how much they hate me, how betrayed they feel, how they'll never forgive me, and how my son will never be their brother. To not even bother telling him about them because they'll never be interested in knowing him. Just to forget about them altogether and move on with my new family. I have no legal recourse. The youngest is 13 now, old enough to have a say in custody arrangements. And I don't think forcing them to see me would do me any favors long term anyways. They also included pictures of their mother's wedding. My ex has no obligation to tell me about her personal life, but I'm pretty pissed that there is a man living with my daughters that I didn't know about. It is a family friend that has been in their lives 10 plus years, so not a total stranger, but still hurt to see pictures of their recent wedding and family pictures with my daughters. They mentioned that they have a father figure and don't need me anyways. The whole thing really hurt. I know I have no right to feel hurt that my ex has moved on when I cheated on her. But their whole relationship has moved very fast, so I'm now wondering if they started it before we got divorced. No way to know now. Doesn't matter anyways. My ex agreed to keep me up to date and send pictures of my daughters once in a while. After dealing with my son's mom, I'm grateful she is so good to our girls and I don't have to worry about their well-being. I'm trying to focus on being a good dad to my son and patiently waiting for my girls to grow up and reach out. It may never happen, but I'm hopeful that they will understand me more as they become adults and gain context for life. My girlfriend made me lose a close friend and I regret it every day. I met my girlfriend our sophomore year in high school and we started to date around the middle of our junior year. When we started dating, I introduced her to my good friend Jane, who was also a junior, who I had met during our freshman year. My girlfriend and Jane seemed to get along and also become friends, but my girlfriend would get jealous of how close Jane and I were. She would get upset whenever Jane and I wanted to hang out after school or if I even texted or called her, because she was afraid Jane and I had feelings for each other when I assured her I only love her. My girlfriend ended up having this dream where I went to a football game with Jane and I never told her, and she caught us there and she got really upset, so she told me this dream and I said that it would never come true, so I told her whenever Jane wanted to hang out with me she could go with us too. This worked for a while. Until my senior year. It was right after our homecoming where Jane was in our group. Joe was a mutual friend of all us, but he was very close with my girlfriend, started running into trouble with Jane and some of her other friends. They said he was fake and wasn't a good person, which we have come to find out was all true. Well, my girlfriend didn't like that. Jane started to grow distant with Joe. So we were at a Halloween party with Joe and my girlfriend decided to text Jane and tell her that we didn't like how she was acting with Joe and she doesn't like that Jane and I are close friends and she didn't want Jane to be friends with us anymore. So Jane, upset, tried to text me, but my girlfriend decided that I shouldn't talk to her anymore, so she deleted her number off my phone. I have always been hurt that I had to lose such a good friend, but I can never bring it up because if I ever do, my girlfriend gets angry at it and says I shouldn't care about her since I'm dating her and not Jane. We have all now graduated and Joe and Jane seem to have made up, but my girlfriend still hates Jane and all I really want to do is contact her and explain everything and how I truly have felt about this whole decision, but I feel that it's been way too long and I lost out on an incredibly important friendship to me. My entitled good-for-nothing niece thinks she deserves more than my son. I told her I'd never love her like I love him. When I, 43, was 18 and when my sister, 47, was 22 at the time I had my nephew, let's call him Luke, with her then boyfriend, now husband. My sister and her husband didn't have any interest in Luke when he was born, so I took the role of taking care of him. I got my grandmother, she's an angel, to watch him while I was in my last year of high school in exchange for me cleaning and cooking for her on the weekends. My parents weren't much help either. They would give me about $100 a month for Luke, and if you have a kid then you know it's not much. Me and my grandmother were the only ones to take care of him. A year after I graduated from high school, I was kicked out with my nephew because my parents, sister, and her husband didn't want to deal with us anymore. My sister said she wished she never gave birth to him. I immediately went to my grandmother and we went to a family law attorney and I got custody of him, and my sister and her husband signed their rights to me. I lived with my grandmother, and when I went to community college and my part-time job, she watched my son, Luke. It was a lot of work, especially when my grandmother passed away when my son was 6. My grandmother left 90% of her things to me in her will, which caused my parents and sister to reach out to me under false intentions to meet my son and I to reconnect. That didn't last long, and I told them they could either act right or never see us again. My dad decided to actually reconnect with my son and I, and now we're close, while my mom and I don't really talk much, but she treats Luke nice. When Luke was 8, both me and my sister became pregnant, and that's when my sister decided she wanted my son back and started to tell him that me and my husband wouldn't love him anymore once my actual son came along. My husband met my son when he was 5 and we were already together for a year before he met my son. My husband treats Luke like his, and we got married when my son was 7 and adopted him when he was 9, with my son's permission. We found out that my sister was saying this when one day he broke down crying, asking us not to leave him after we told him that would never happen. He explained what my sister and her husband were saying. Luke knows that he's not my biological son, but he is my son. After that, I cut contact with my sister and her husband again and did family therapy and individual therapy for my son. When I had my son, 1 pregnancy, 2 children, I made it clear that our love for him, Luke, didn't change. When my sister reached out about 2 years later, I decided to go low contact with her with the okay with my son and husband. My husband and I live comfortably while my sister and her husband struggle sometimes financially. My kids did extracurricular activities, got the presents they wanted, and went on one big family trip in the summer. While my sister and her husband couldn't afford much, so when my niece was around 9, my sister started making comments about how I needed to pay for this or that for my niece, but I told her it wasn't my job. I gave my niece the gifts she wanted, took her out from time to time, but nowhere near how I would treat my own kids. Now my son, second, is turning 17, and my husband and I were talking about getting him a cheap starter car. We did the same for Luke when he was 17. My niece is also turning 17, and apparently my sister told her she was going to get a car too. The thing is, my sister can't afford to buy her a car, so she asked me to, but I told her I wasn't going to buy her a car. That I didn't promise her one and that it's not my job to get her one. My sister then got mad and didn't talk to me for a while. When my son's 17th birthday came around, we surprised him with a car. My niece then called me a couple of days later screaming and crying, asking me why I hate her and why I can't treat her the same as her brother. I calmly told her things were different. Her brother is my son while she is my niece. I'm her aunt and nothing more. That as an aunt, my job was birthday presents, Christmas presents, and showing up when it mattered. That was it. That her brother will always be more to me than she'll ever be. Then my niece started yelling at me again, telling me that I'm being unfair, and hung up. My sister then called me to berate me about how I need to do more. I told her if she wouldn't have promised a car to her or my money to my niece, no, of this wouldn't have happened. It's been a couple of days and I'm getting calls from some family and some of my sister's friends calling me a bitch and some other things. I do feel bad because my kids did grow up with more and I guess I could have helped more. People who take walks at night. What's the scariest thing you've seen? One time I turned around to see what was behind me just out of intuition, and I saw someone step behind a tree rather quickly and try to hide from me. I stood there for a second to confirm this, then I speed walked home. Effing creepy. I once saw tiny hands reaching out of a sewer grate. Took me a minute before I realized it was a raccoon. Dead body on the side of the street with a sign around its neck saying, "I'm a cell phone thief, don't be like me." This was maybe 20 years ago in Manila, Philippines. Over 25 years ago, I was walking in a park at night. It was pitch black in this park, no lighting, other than the moon and the stars on a beautiful autumn night. I couldn't see very well, but I knew the area, and was walking along the road, which ran parallel to a small river. The moonlight would bounce off the water, and all you would hear is the trickle from the slow-running river and slight breeze in the trees. I loved those walks. That was until the one night, in the dead silence and pitch black, I distinctly hear a man's voice out of the woods say very clearly, "Young girls shouldn't go walking alone in the woods at night." I froze. I looked in the direction of the voice and couldn't see a damn thing. I ran home. That was the last evening walk I took in that park.
I am dating an almost unreasonably picky eater and I'm pretty much at the end of my rope. I met Jake about 2 years ago while out and bonding over the fact that we graduated from the same college. We went on a couple dates and were getting to know each other when he let me know that he had more or less eaten pizza every day for the past 3 years. I didn't love the idea, but I thought he was pretty cool besides that and figured it was just a little quirk he had that he was exaggerating and that the dude just really liked pizza. He was not. He eats it every single day without fail. Each time we go out, it has to be pizza, and after a few fights here and there, it's been pretty much an unspoken understanding that when we go out we will be getting pizza. Also, it's not just any pizza, he's even picky about his pizza. He'll make us go to a few totally inconvenient pizza places that requires a subway ride trip and is far from where either of us live. We live in New York City, and I'm sure most of you know you pretty much can't pass a single block without stumbling upon a pizza place, so it's not like these places are our only options. I can name all the foods he eats on both my hands. All are simple carbohydrates, but pizza is his absolute favorite. The others he'll just settle to eat if pizza is not immediately available. No vegetables, no fruit, no protein whatsoever. he absolutely refuses to even try them despite never trying most of them before. I've tried to gently push his boundaries, but it always fails, and the one time we went somewhere I wanted to go he pouted the entire time and ordered French fries. He's promised to be more open and that this pizza thing won't be forever, but that it's working for him now, whatever that means. He claims to be high functioning on the spectrum, which honestly, I'm not totally convinced of, but that's another story. And that's why he can only eat pizza. This made me more cautious of discussing my issues with his diet because I know how easily he can claim I'm insensitive to his disability and that it's something he truly cannot help, and he has. I do firmly believe he has some sort of avoidant eating disorder. That is clearly not debatable. I've more or less dropped it because it always starts a fight, but the resentment is still there. Something I wasn't totally sold on when we first met but convinced myself was a small quirk is turning into genuine disgust and bitterness towards him and his unwillingness. I guess he thought I got over it since I stopped bringing it up as much, and he informed me of his plan to stop eating pizza every day after 10,000 consecutive days of eating pizza. To do the math for you, that's roughly around 2,040 factoring in the days he's already gained. He's going to document it on his Instagram story and show everybody his streak. He seems so proud of this idea and commitment, and I'm genuinely stunned. He thinks this is just some interesting, cute little tidbit about him that people will support because he's such an offbeat guy. I could not believe what I was hearing. Taking away the inconvenience of always having to eat where he wants to eat, not being able to cook for us, me being bored stupid over eating the same crap every time. It's simply not healthy. He claims because he's outwardly fit it's not a big deal, but I disagree. I was sort of putting up with the whole pizza thing at first, but upon this announcement, I don't know if I can deal with this much longer. It's inconvenient, it's unhealthy, and in my opinion it's selfish. Everybody you go to eat out with has to cater to a single person's self-imposed dietary restrictions. He's going to Germany with his family for vacation and he's already mapped out the available pizza places he can eat at. German pizza over authentic German cuisine. It very well could be something he can't help, and he has claimed to be getting help through therapy with it, but I'm seeing no progress, and honestly I don't think he wants to and only says he's working on it to placate me. He talks about having a future with me and having kids, and there's no way I would even consider that if he continues to commit to this streak, for the fear of setting a bad example for our children's eating habits. We don't live together and only see each other about 3 times a week, and the pizza thing is driving me crazy. He proposed moving in together and I immediately shot that down for the time being. If I can barely handle it now, I know living together would only amplify it. I've tried gently coaxing, I've tried showing him studies on how his diet affects his life and sets back the fitness goals he's always complaining about never reaching. I tried fighting in anger only to be told I'm an asshole because I need to accept him as he is and that he can't help it. Maybe he is right. I have to accept it or I have to move on. And at this point I truly don't think I can. He's great in almost every other way except for this. I feel guilty for letting it go on this long when it bothered me from the very beginning, but I can't change that now. Do I concede and let him eat whatever he wants as he's a grown man? Should I draw this boundary and continue to push him to push himself and give an ultimatum? Or do I just need to throw in the towel at this point and move on with my life? Never thought I'd get so stressed out over pizza. What's the quickest you've ever seen someone ruin their life? My sister got married some years back. I was asked to be a bridesmaid at the wedding. I had never met the best man. The wedding was due to start at 3 p.m. My sister had a beautiful ceremony. She looked stunning. The bride and groom were so in love and everything went perfectly. Whilst pictures were being taken of the bridal party, the bar opened for the guests. Well, it turns out the best man made good use of the bar during this time, because by the time we're ready to sit down to dinner he's 3 sheets to the wind. I don't know if he was trying to drown his nerves because he hadn't written his speech, but when he stands up he pulls out a receipt from his pocket and pretends it's his speech. He was slurring his words, telling everyone about the time he and the groom had to work at an intimacy worker club in Magaluf, where they got intoxicated and spent the night trying to pay off their bar tab from the night before. The bride and groom were mortified. In the end, the groom had to force his best man to sit down whilst my sister tried to hide her tears. The night only got worse from there. When the disco started, he rushed up to the dance floor, knocking all the kids out of his way. The groom had a word with him and the best man disappeared for a bit. We knew he hadn't left because his heavily pregnant partner and mother were still there. When he reappeared, he had his ex-girlfriend on his arm, who was attending the wedding with a different groomsman. They started rubbing up on each other on the dance floor. His partner was in tears, his mother was blowing a gasket. He then took his ex-girlfriend to the disabled toilets to do the deed. The pregnant partner and mother were done and took the car to leave. He left in a taxi with his ex 10 minutes later. It wasn't even 9 p.m., this guy blew his life up in less than 6 hours. Luckily we managed to keep my sister away from the worst of it, and the rest of the evening went off without any problems.
My crazy religious wife is forcing our young son to quit gymnastics because she believes he's sinning by being around other girls. Now I'm divorcing her because she's sick in the head. I met my wife in youth group before getting married years later. It was obvious from day one that she was the stricter one between us. While I believe in being strict to a point, I still think there are some times when she's been unreasonably strict. There have been times where I've had to step in and put my foot down over things that she was overcomplicating. I remember her denying our son to skip youth group to go to a friend's birthday party because God is supposed to come first. While I do understand that, I told her she was being unreasonable, along with how missing an occasional Friday wouldn't hurt. But she said it wasn't just that, he wasn't allowed to have friends who aren't Christians and the boy he wanted to go see wasn't Christian. I told her it was ridiculous that she was limiting who our son could be friends with just because of her religion. She nearly slapped me at that and said I insulted her. The whole thing turned into a big argument where she didn't speak to me, made me sleep on the couch, and even made the kid ignore me. The argument wasn't over until I apologized, but we always kept coming back to the subject whenever she saw him with a friend she knew wasn't Christian. From then on, I calmly asked her what the problem was and she confessed that she had made too many mistakes after drifting from God after graduating high school and thinking that she didn't need him. So, in her words, she was just trying to help him avoid doing the same thing. I told her that while I understood where she was coming from, forcing him to do/go to something he doesn't want to, will not help him long term and only make him resentful later on. However, she's convinced that he'll turn to drinking and doing substances like she did. She often says those memories often stick with her to the point where she doesn't want him ever having to repeat her mistakes. This brings us to our latest argument. She wants him to quit gymnastics because she thinks that being around a bunch of girls in tights is unhealthy, along with how God wants us to shield our eyes from things that could distract us from him. I honestly thought she was a little crazy, especially because she was insinuating that our son wouldn't be able to control himself in front of girls and would ultimately do something bad. She also says the sport provides a lot of easy opportunities for him to become lustful in an environment that seems completely normal, and I already knew that trying to talk her out of this one would be almost pointless, but I tried nonetheless, for my son's sake. I told her that while she can think whatever she wants, it doesn't mean that others will think the same way. There's nothing immoral about doing gymnastics and we need to support him because he clearly has a passion for it, but she said she didn't want him around an environment that often harbored girls of different ages, and that the last thing she wanted was for him to start looking at younger girls. That's where I snapped because not allowing him to have Christian friends was one thing, but she crossed the line with that one. I told her that while I supported her desire to talk to him about purity, she is wrong for putting her religious bias in everything and assuming the worst for our son. She was being a bad mother for assuming our son would think like that, along with how she's wrong for viewing gymnastics in that light. But she couldn't see how in the wrong she was. This was clearly a hill she was willing to die on. She said that she'll no longer drive him or allow him to go at the end of his current class, and I told her that she's wrong and constantly over the top about everything, along with how she's presenting a demented example of Christianity to him. The next day, my son called me at work to tell me what his mom had said. According to her, this would be his last semester in gymnastics because it is her duty to protect him while he lives under our roof and shield him from sin. I was pissed. She went behind my back knowing damn well our conversation was not over and she made a huge decision that would impact our son negatively, all because she was accusing him of one of the worst crimes out there. I tried to talk to her again, but she told me to save it because her decision was final and she gets to make that call because she's the one that drives him to the gymnastics place. I tried my best to reassure my son I would talk to her as long as it takes to get her to change her mind, and he looked a bit better after I said that, but I'm slightly torn on this one. She's the only one that can drive him because I'm at work and if she doesn't want to take him, then she doesn't have to. However, the car issue is the least of our problems. My wife doesn't want to renew him at the end of the semester. I'm considering using my own money to pay for it myself, but since our finances are combined, I know she'll throw a fit about it. Even if I do that, I have no clue how he's going to get there. I know that my wife is wrong and that he shouldn't have to quit just because of her assumptions, but I also know that the real issue lies within our marriage. I want to make things work, and I understand that she's been through a lot. That's why she's so adamant about him staying close to God. But, I disagree with the way she's going about it, and I'm questioning if I'll ever be able to fully get through to her. My crazy religious wife is forcing our young son to quit gymnastics because she believes he's sinning by being around other girls. Now I'm divorcing her because she's sick in the head. My wife wanted my son to quit gymnastics because she thinks that him being around other girls in gymnastics apparel would cause his mind to lust and be ungodly. This would then make him impure and she believes the second he turns away from God, he'll be getting wasted every day. This whole situation has been brewing for years and it's made me tired of her religious nonsense. She doesn't even respect the religion since it's become a scapegoat for petty beliefs that people want to promote under the guise of something like that, and I think it's very manipulative. For years, I stayed quiet and did nothing, but that only made me complicit with her. The thought of separation and the opinions that would follow from our church and parents and friends would be overwhelming, considering how some really consider it taboo to get divorced. But after her recent nonsense with labeling our son as a predator, I don't really care anymore. I've been growing more numb to religion over the past few years because of her, and after hearing her suggest that our son would look at girls in the very same environment that he's grown up around for years in a lustful way just doesn't sit well with me. She's actively sexualizing a sport filled with kids and suggested that our son could become a predator if he stayed, and that has resonated more than anything else she's ever done. This has made me wonder if she already thinks our son is a predator, despite him not doing anything. Before doing anything, I decided to talk to her one-on-one about the matter. I asked if she had anything against gymnastics personally, and I told her that trying to make him quit would only make him hate us. This was something our son loved and has expressed he wants to do it as he gets older. Denying him of the one thing he wants in life seems cruel and mean. I don't want my son to grow up to resent me just because of his mother. But her response to my questions was, the world has a habit of making everything that isn't intimate, and that the gymnastics environment promotes girls in clothing that can be easily looked at wrongfully. Honestly, I had never thought of gymnastics that way, so that says more about her than it does our son. I get that the clothing could be provocative, but I never focused on that and just thought of how happy my son looks while he's on the balance beam. She then went on to say that God wants us to have clean eyes, so it's only reasonable that our son quit gymnastics. When I suggested that perhaps she was projecting her personal problems on him, she just said no and didn't want to talk about it. She was being so immature and wasn't cooperating when a marriage is supposed to be about working things out. She then proceeded to get upset and say that I'm wrong for allowing our son to stay in an environment where he'll grow older as younger girls keep coming in. She said that it says a lot about what I'm comfortable about looking at and what I allow him to do. I was just done after that because she was now accusing me of being unfaithful and liking underage girls. All because I didn't think our son should quit something he enjoys. I went to talk to my son instead to let him know we'd be going up to my parents for a while, and I was upfront about why. His mom was being a crazy pervert and I'm 100% on his side. It's not his fault his mom is sexualizing a sport and minors in a way that is very inappropriate. I'm currently working on divorcing my wife and undoing the damage she's done to my son. Am I the a-hole for screaming at my husband for bringing a puppy home after my 11-year-old dog just died? My German Shepherd dog Roxy recently passed away at 11 years old. Towards the end I was carrying her from room to room and one morning I woke up to find that she had passed away during her sleep. Even though I knew that she was getting old and eventually she would die, her death hit me extremely hard. I cried for days and depression took over my life. I still worked, went to the gym, etc., but I sometimes would forget to eat or shower in the morning and my husband would make sure to remind me. I became visibly skinnier but I still managed to show myself as happy and full of life when I went out with my friends or just went out in general. They did ask me if I was okay because I had just lost my dog but I would always put a smile on and reply with I'm okay because I know she's up in dog heaven or something similar. Only my husband saw my depressive side and he was concerned all the time and tried to cheer me up by using his great sense of humor, one of the best qualities about him. He even brought over a 7-week-old German Shepherd puppy who looked exactly like how Roxy did when she was 2 months old from one of his friends whose female dog had given birth 7 weeks ago and he must have seen the joy on my face when I played and cuddled with the puppy. Roxy passed away 3 weeks ago and the visit from the puppy was 1.5 weeks ago. 4 days ago I went on a 2-day work trip. When I returned home, I was greeted by the same puppy that my husband had brought 8 days ago. My husband came to me with a huge smile on his face and asked how was my trip and everything. All I could focus on was the puppy and I asked him what was the puppy doing here? He smiled even more and said that he saw how much I loved the puppy so he bought her for $5,600 at a discount from his friend as a present to me. I immediately asked him why would you do this? You know I'm not over Roxy, but you wanted to bring another puppy like Roxy can just be replaced like that? And I went to the bedroom and slammed the door and burst into tears. The puppy had followed me but I had closed the door before she could come in and she was scratching the door. My husband told me that he was sorry but he thought this is what I wanted. I yelled at him that he should have asked me first and to just leave me alone. I know that his intentions were good and he wanted me to be happy, but I loved Roxy like she was my daughter. I've had her since I was in high school and she's been my rock and support throughout every hardship. She was also my protector who saved me from possible dangers, specifically from men. Even though she was a female dog, she was still very frightening when in attack mode and her protection work was top-notch. I was still grieving and wasn't ready to connect with another dog. The next day I told my husband that I was sorry for my breakdown and that I was just still going through the grieving process. He forgave me, but he is still visibly upset at me. I wanted him to return the puppy but I feel so guilty for yelling at him and that he spent so much money that I decided to keep the puppy. So I kept the puppy, but not out of guilt. Someone mentioned that the same thing happened to them but the new puppy was able to help them through the grieving process and that's exactly what is happening. The new puppy has brought me so much joy and love over the past few days and because she looks exactly like Roxy did when she was the same age, it's like reliving Roxy's puppyhood and being given a second opportunity to furnish her with the same amount of love. I wanted to name her Roxy but I decided to go with Althea which means healing and I think it's the perfect name for her. I have apologized to my husband again for yelling at him and reacting the way I did when he meant well. He said that he understood that I was grieving and that dogs can't be replaced like cars, that he should have consulted with me first before bringing in a live puppy that requires a colossal amount of care. Stop scrolling. I made an innocent comment that may have destroyed my relationship, hear me out. So I told my girlfriend my type. It's been secretly eating at her, and I had no idea. Sometime a while back, I brought up the topic of types. I mentioned it because her best friend and I seemed to damn near be the exact same individual, just of different genders, and I joked that she must have a type. She took it a bit more seriously than I intended and proceeded to tell me she wasn't sure she had a type, but she did like it when men were comfortable with expressing femininity, and that she thought tattoos were cool. Then she asked me my type, and I told her that generally it's been curvy blondes with long hair, big chests and blue eyes. She lightly teased me for having basic tastes and we moved on. The past couple of months, she's been asking for constant reassurance, asking if I'm sure I like her immediately after moments of intimacy, asking if I find her attractive, etc. She also stopped coming with me to the gym, which was strange because she loves weightlifting, and has lost a lot of her muscle tone. This morning, a woman walked past our car at a red light. I sincerely didn't notice her, but my girlfriend said, "Wow, look at her, she's exactly your type." I hadn't thought about that conversation since it happened, but everything made sense, instantly. I told my girlfriend that she was my type, she said, "Not even close," and started crying. I have only seen her cry one other time in the 4 years I've known her. My girlfriend is tall, flat-chested, muscular and has short brown hair and brown eyes. She's beautifully androgynous and occasionally people mistake her for a very pretty teenage boy. I love and I'm attracted to every bit of this about her more than any other type that exists because she's her. She said when she spoke about her type, she said she described a vague style pretty much anyone could embody, and I do dress and style myself a bit adventurously for a man. Meanwhile I described an individual person she was in no way similar to, but always felt like she was expected to be. She said she couldn't go to the gym anymore because she'd tell herself I was checking out other girls. I glanced sometimes but not egregiously, and we used to do this together, and all she could think about was how unlike my ideal woman she was. That one throwaway conversation has been eating away at and completely wrecked her self-esteem for months, and I only just realized. Looking back, she definitely did try to bring it up once before early on, and I brushed it off with, "You're perfect for me baby, don't worry about stupid stuff," not understanding how bad she was feeling. So yeah, I feel like I messed up, not sure what to do about it. Thanks for watching, don't forget to follow for more stories. I'll see you in the next video.
What is the most heartbreaking thing someone has said to you? So, did you ever really love me then? No. I'll let you know when that one stops hurting. My best friend lost his first wife in a car accident. At the funeral parlor their son, about 3 at the time, stopped playing with his cousin to look me in the eye and say, "My mommy's dead. No wonder you have no friends." Said during an argument with my aunt, shortly after I moved to a different state. I've since made friends in my area, but that was an awful thing to hear at the time because I was unbearably lonely. Grandfather told me all my friends are dying. I'll be the only one left soon, really hit me hard.
What was the most legendary thing a student did at your private school? It took 4 years of law school to find out the top secret my school has been hiding for years. The future lawyers of tomorrow aren't the geniuses my school wants you to think they are. I've had to break my back studying for every single exam, but I've never even come close to being in the top 10. I've spent hours studying just to get a B while the top 10 didn't even go to the library and somehow still wound up with perfect GPAs. I would be slaving away in my dorm trying to get a perfect 100 on every exam just to taste a sliver of what they regularly get. Meanwhile, they would be partying at frats on the weekends or skipping their classes on the weekdays. I had no idea how they had made it so far. I feel like I do more than them and I'm not rewarded with half of what they get. At first I thought they were paying the teachers off with daddy's money, but I've met the parents of the elite at one of our events and they're incredibly strict. They don't play about grades and actually want their kids to succeed on their own merits. I didn't have that same discipline, but I had done really well in the first 3 years of law school regardless of that. However, my senior year was kicking me in the butt. I had tried to follow my previous study methods and personalized schedule, but I took on way more than I could handle in my final year. I thought I was going to be fine and I was up for the challenge because I wanted to make sure I was going to get into a master's program. But this was my worst mistake. I figured out way too early that I couldn't do it all. At the start of the semester, I could have never guessed things would get so bad that my GPA would fall down to a pitiful 2.5. All the other students seemed so confident, so focused, yet nonchalant. Meanwhile, I was drowning in my overwhelming new workload. Before I had time to catch my breath, I was damn near failing all my classes, and it was taking a toll on not only my mental health but my health too. I was doing everything I could to try and pull my pathetic grades up. All-nighters back to back, Red Bulls to keep me alert in class, studying in the library for 8 hours straight. I had never worked harder, yet my grades had never been lower. I started to lose hope completely. The more I tried to catch up, the further I fell behind. For every single test I took, I was the last person left by the end of the class. It was humiliating. It broke my spirit a little more each time I found myself sitting there all alone, watching the professor sigh and check their watch. I had gray, drooping bags under my eyes, and my appetite was suffering. So I started thinning out. I had never looked or felt worse in my life, but what could I do? Give it all up now? It wasn't an option. But this degree was going to kill me if I didn't manage to break into whatever superhuman mindset these other students around me seemed to have. Everything came crumbling down one afternoon after I got my third D in one of my most challenging classes. That grade was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just came apart when I saw that I had failed yet another huge test. I walked out of the library, slumped down onto a bench outside, and started crying. All the pain and stress I had been carrying since the semester started just poured out of me. I couldn't carry it anymore, and then, I was approached by an angel. I'm not a religious man to any degree, but I will always see that random stranger as my one guardian angel since she changed my life so severely. I was sobbing with my face in my hands, ignorant to anyone watching a grown man cry, when I heard a soft, "You okay?" I opened my eyes to see a gorgeous girl looking at me with concern. I wiped my eyes, snorted and mumbled out an unconvincing "I'm fine." That's when she sat down right next to me and said, "It's your grades, isn't it? When someone's crying around here, that's usually it." She got a chuckle out of me with that and then said she was going to let me in on the little secret that was going on around here. That's when she asked for my laptop, and I gave it to her. Dumbly, I watched her open Chrome and search Study Buddy before returning it to me. She told me the extension was the only reason the other students had straight A's since it gave them immediate answers to their assignments, and the top 10 abused it relentlessly. After she walked away, I took a better look at the extension and its features. I went home that night and thought about using the extension. I had been apprehensive at first since I was putting everything on the line if I got caught cheating, but I knew that if I didn't do this I would be kicked out and would never get into my master's. After using it to complete my homework that first night, by the time I was done, I could have picked my jaw up off the floor over how shocked I was at the difference it made. My nightly homework routine consisted of tears and typing, spanning about 4 to 5 hours every night, more if I had a project due that week. But that night, I ran all my assignments through Study Buddy and was done in an hour. It was a total miracle to me. I remember getting the best sleep I've had in months because I finished my homework so early into the night. I had completely forgotten about how refreshing it felt to get a full 8 hours of sleep. The following week was as different as night and day compared to the stressful start of the semester. I used Study Buddy for all my homework and projects, and it gave me hours of free time and stress relief that I hadn't experienced since starting the semester. All my worrying and all mental pain just vanished because of one mysterious girl's advice. In a week's time, I had brought up every single one of my grades from near failing to a perfect A. I stopped dreading test days since I could just have Study Buddy take them for me, and all I had to do was show up to class. Everyone's laid-back attitude started to make sense to me, This was the mystery that was going on at my school, and I had finally been let in on it. Since I could use Study Buddy for all of my busy work, I started directing most of my focus toward my most challenging classes. Without all the time and energy cleared up for me by Study Buddy, I surely would have miserably failed my most challenging classes within the first half of the semester. After chatting with some other students, I learned this was how most of them chose to study. Being able to dismiss nightly homework deadlines or any menial quizzes with one easy click saved me loads of stress and time. After all my school stress was lifted off me with one excellent recommendation, I started to use my free time to improve myself. At my worst, I didn't realize that fixing my grades would end up fixing me as a person. After my grades stabilized, I started to feel like myself again. And I thought about how much that random girl had utterly changed my life for the better. I started going to the gym and had more time to make friends around campus. I gained all the weight I had lost back, plus some extra muscle, and noticed girls checking me out more often. My self-esteem shot up with my grades, and soon enough I became part of a great friend group. It meant the world to have friends that understood all my academic struggles, and we were constantly sharing study hacks. As I branched out socially, I learned that nearly the entire student body all had their own form of AI cheating software. I was just lucky enough to find one that worked with Canvas, and just in time before I had tanked my grades any further. By the end of the year, my GPA was a gleaming 3.7, and I was overjoyed but not surprised when I got into my top choice for my master's. I remember scanning the crowd at my graduation, trying to find the girl who had basically solidified my successful future, all because she took the time to introduce me to Study Buddy. I never saw her again, but I hope to run into her again one day, by some miracle, so I can finally thank her for the overwhelming impact her small act of kindness had on my life. What is the best part of a breakup? A sense of horrible freedom. After a 10-year relationship, my ex and I were no longer together, but he made it clear he also didn't want me with anyone else. I never realized how much control he had over me until a month after we ceased all contact and my friend/coworker needed a place to stay for a night. I invited him to my place, where I live alone, to sleep in the spare bedroom. After I offered up my guest room, I felt a nagging guilt, like I was doing something wrong and someone would have something to say to me, as if I would get in trouble for having someone stay at my house for the night. Then I reminded myself I'm an adult and no one pays my bills except me, and that I can do stuff like have a friend spend the night. Without a controlling so who, months ago, decided he didn't want to be with me, but also didn't want me to be with anyone else. And I'm in my mid-30s. And single. So I can have people sleep over.